18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me throughout the show, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also author and broadcaster and commentator. She's not a commentator, she's Lizzie Candy. Right, on today's show, the Labour Party kick off their conference in Liverpool as Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner delivered a keynote speech fighting back tears as she took the stage amid their party freebies and foreign and rows, and the Foreign Secretary David Lammy claiming Britain is back. To the Tory leadership race, where former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has revealed dozens of terror suspects have crossed the Channel in small boats. And for the interview, I'll be joined by ex-gangster turned CEO Steven Gillan, once one of the UK's most wanted London members, now determined to help others avoid going down a criminal path. We'll be talking about Labour's early prison release scheme and was it successful? But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 3 o'clock. The top story this hour. The Labour Party conference is now underway in Liverpool, their first conference in power in almost 15 years. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner gave her speech earlier this morning, addressing concerns around the party and hitting out at the previous Conservative government. Take a listen.
There will be no complacency. We've seen where that leads. Don't forget what they did. Partygate, COVID contracts, the lies, division, scapegoating and the unfunded tax cuts for the richest that crashed our economy. Don't forget any of it. The Tories failed Britain and they tried to cover it up. A crater in the heart of Britain's economy, a puncher in the pocket of every working family, and a £22 billion black hole.
It could also be trouble for Sir Keir Starmer elsewhere in the UK, as the SNP's Westminster leader Stephen Flynn has said the new Prime Minister is failing to deliver on the change that he promised Scotland in the general election in July. He claims that despite the SNP being willing to work with Labour, that Sir Keir is, he says, completely out of touch with Scotland and the issues the country's facing. It comes after the Prime Minister's already faced criticism over cuts to the winter fuel allowance and his acceptance of clothing donations. Well, earlier our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire asked the people of Glasgow if they feel Sir Keir is delivering.
In 3 months, give or take, this Labour government, how do you think they're performing for Scotland?
1 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah.
Again, why?
I'm a pensioner. They've taken my winter fuel allowance and it's wrong.
I had high hopes for Keir Starmer and no, it's all gone.
Has there been any? I haven't really noticed much, to be honest.
I'm ashamed to say I'm a Glaswegian, really, when I see the state of the place. And if that's 13 years of SNP, we're in big trouble. Well, no, we might be out of the trouble now with the Labour in. I don't know. Just a matter of wait and see.
Elsewhere in politics, Reform leader Nigel Farage has sat down with GB News' political editor Christopher Hope at their party conference yesterday. Speaking on Chopper's political podcast, Mr Farage said in order for Reform to make an impact at the local elections next May, the party will, he says, have to complete 10 years of evolution in just the next 6 months. However, that hasn't stopped him from setting quite the target.
We've got enough people to have 2,300 candidates. The question is, are they the right 2,300 candidates? Because we will be held to a higher standard than everybody else. I'm aiming in those elections to win hundreds of seats.
And you can listen to the full interview there on Chopper's political podcast, which you can, of course, find wherever you get your podcasts from. Well, it's been reported that 4 people have been killed and dozens of others have been wounded in a mass shooting in Alabama. The Birmingham Police Department in the US have said the attack took place in the 5 Points South area around 11 o'clock last night. Authorities also believe multiple shooters were involved, though no arrests have been made so far. According to local media there, responding officers found multiple victims at the scene of the shooting. 3 sadly pronounced dead, while a 4th later died in hospital. News from the Middle East, and a funeral for the senior Hezbollah leader and one of the group's members has been taking place in the Lebanese capital of Beirut this afternoon. The service was to mark the deaths of senior leader Ibrahim Akil and for Hezbollah member Mahmoud Hamad. The 2 were killed in Friday's Israeli strike on Beirut's southern suburbs. The commemorations marking the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Arnhem have continued in the Netherlands today. This morning, veterans, armed forces personnel and the Princess Royal gathered at the Oosterbeek War Cemetery for the Airborne Memorial Service. And with the event closed by the fly past from the Battle of Britain memorial flight. Earlier, Her Royal Highness Princess Anne gave a reading to mark the 80th anniversary of Operation Market Garden.
He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust.
And finally, they've always been there for us. For the past 3 decades anyway, today marks the 30th birthday of one of the most iconic series of all time. Yes, of course, it's Friends. The show premiered for the first time in the US back in 1994, fast becoming one of NBC's most watched programmes and lasting for 10 series. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. It's fast approaching 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. On different radio. Digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, of course, the Labour Party conference has kicked off amid the ongoing row over freebies and infighting. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner says that she understands the anger, but assures supporters that now change begins. We're live in Liverpool with our reporters and exclusive guests. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for the Labour Party to take action against rogue landlords? This comes as Labour MP for Ilford South Jazz Athwal breached child safety rules for the nurseries at Iran. Is it time for the party to take action? Then we'll cross line to Tel Aviv as tensions in the Middle East escalate with a week of terror and explosions in the region. The IDF claim Hezbollah's leadership has almost been completely dismantled. I'll get the thoughts of Uri Geller shortly. And for the interview, I'll be joined by ex-gangster turned CEO Steven Gillan, once one of the UK's most wanted London gang members, now determined to help others avoid going down the criminal path. We'll be also talking about Labour's early prison release scheme and was it successful? All of that is on the way. Send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Right, so the Labour Party conference in Liverpool gets underway as Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner delivered a keynote speech, fighting back tears as she took to the stage amid their party freebies row. But Angela still had a chance to hit out at the Tories. Let's have a listen.
There will be no complacency. We've seen where that leads. Don't forget what they did. Partygate, COVID contracts, the lies, division, scapegoating and the unfunded tax cuts for the richest that crashed our economy. Don't forget any of it. The Tories failed Britain and they tried to cover it up. A crater in the heart of Britain's economy, a puncher in the pocket of every working family and a £22 billion black hole.
Which I think you might all fall in if you carry on as you're going. Well, joining me now live from Liverpool is our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, quite an impressive speech this morning. There are many things that I would agree with Angela on. One of the things she did focus on, though, she did focus a lot on housing, and obviously that's part of her remit, and landlords and how tenants should be treated. But was there any mention, though, and has anyone mentioned Labour MP Jazz Athwal?
Well, no, they haven't mentioned him. He is, of course, the Commons' biggest landlord. He's got more rental properties than anybody else, and it emerged a few weeks ago that 15 of his tenants were complaining about mould and ants, etc., reflected very, very badly on him indeed. And a couple of days ago, there was another story about him that some nurseries run by him were not living up to minimum standards. But that's only one of the many, many rows going on about the Labour Party at the moment. And talking about Angela Rayner, the Housing Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, who of course was speaking earlier, there's an ongoing row now about her accommodation in New York over the New Year period, because she went for 5 days. She stayed in a very lovely £2.5 million apartment owned by Lord Ali, who also gave money to the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's wife, etc. And she didn't mention that Sam Tarry, who was then also an MP, had stayed with her. So she's been questioned about that this morning. She said, look, this is all within the rules, and in terms of politicians accepting donations and freebies, this is how politics is. The important thing is that we're transparent, which we have been. But I do think this continuing drip of stories over the last week or so, starting last Sunday with the news that Lord Ali, who'd had a temporary pass to Downing Street, had given Lady Starmer £5,000 worth of free clothes. This row has just gone on. Every day, pretty much, there's been a new revelation. We've learnt that the PM has accepted over £100,000 in donations, and so Labour are here with this huge majority in government for the first time in 14 years. They want to talk about change beginning, as they say. They got elected on that word change. They want to talk about housing. They want to talk about planning, workers' rights. But at the moment, there is a real risk that all that is overshadowed by all these donations, rows, and that far from bringing the change, some members of the public will look at them and think they're much the same as the last lot.
because some of the things that she's saying, if you closed your eyes and turned the words to Labour, it would almost, she could literally be talking about the Labour Party. That's just my view. Now, how was David Lammy's speech received? Now, he's just been speaking.
Well, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, of course, has hugely pressing issues to deal with, doesn't he? Because we've got the war in Ukraine, we've got the highly contentious issue of whether or not Storm Shadow missiles will be authorized by the US to fire into Russia itself. Vladimir Putin has vowed very serious consequences if that happens. There's also the escalating situation in the Middle East, of course, with the attacks last week by Israel on Hezbollah, the assassination of their leader. Things are getting to an incredibly worrying place in the Middle East. So David Lammy he's been shuttling here, there and everywhere. There's the UN General Assembly later this week too. He also made his first speech last week, and in that he was talking about climate change. Actually, he was saying that climate change, above and beyond everything, is the biggest issue facing the world, and that he wants climate change and climate change resilience to be at the heart of everything that the Foreign Office does.
Yes, I bet he does, because that's the one thing that he can do absolutely probably nothing about, really. It's quite interesting that he'd focus on that with all the wars that are happening. That's the biggest thing, because obviously without a world, without a planet, if we blow ourselves up, we won't need to worry about that at all. So who are the other speakers we're looking forward to hearing today?
I do not have the list. Oh, hold on, let me get it up on my phone. Those are the main two, to be honest, Nana, for today. And then tomorrow, the big one will be Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. We'll be hearing from her. Of course, there's huge speculation about what horrors potentially are going to be in the budget on October the 30th. Lots of people worried about more tax rises. We know there's going to be pain coming. There's been a huge backlash to the winter fuel allowance. And then Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, his speech will be on Tuesday. And after that, he will be jetting off to the United Nations General Assembly. So a lot of things happening on, tons of fringe events, lots of different stalls, and of course the party of government. So there'll be a business day tomorrow with, I think, about 500 business leaders keen to hear about Labour's plans for government and how that might impact them, because of course Angela Rayner's got this big workers' rights bill wanting to give workers more rights. Not everyone in business is all that happy with that.
Right, Catherine Forster, thank you so much. That's the brilliant Catherine Forster. She's out there at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, should Rachel Reeves' upcoming budget scrap foreign aid to fill the government's financial black hole? But next, is it time that Labour took action against rogue landlord Jazz Aswell? This is GB News.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Good morning, everybody. I honestly
think Gen Z are as lazy as we've been made out. I was on GB News a couple of months ago talking about a report which suggested that they were very lazy, very work shy, and I honestly don't think that's the case. I respect my elders, so I'm certainly not going to sit here and blame them for the slow return to many offices across the country. But I am actually 20. I've run businesses since I was 15 and 16, since I dropped out of school, and I have always been pro-office, right? So I fit right into that Generation Z category, and I think the office environment is fantastic, not just professionally, but socially for young people, especially kind of after COVID, and it halted a lot of their social plans or people going to university, etc. I think getting people into the office, being surrounded by the more senior people, the people with more experience, which is what we're talking about, older people, is actually incredibly positive. But I think Generation Z get a lot of stick in the media, and I'm often sat here debating this about them being called lazy. I guess I think probably what's different is technology is advanced, so people's jobs are a lot quicker, and Generation Z have obviously grew up with that technology, therefore in a position to do jobs quicker. And I guess that's kind of where that kind of narrative has come from, because Gen Z do really kind of go with the whole work smarter, not harder kind of mentality, which is often met with a little bit of stick.
I'm not knocking the young generation at all. I mean, I'm just saying it's by experience. Undoubtedly, they're not as hard-working as the more experienced worker, but I'm certainly not knocking them on that basis. If they had the opportunity, I'm sure there'd be more and more would want to get into the workplace. But unfortunately, I think this COVID has changed the world, and it's made younger people more lazy than older people. Older people just can't wait to, well, shouldn't say that, can't wait to get out of the house to get to work.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, good afternoon. Just coming up to 20 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has announced a Labour-led crackdown on rogue landlords, pledging to end the scandal of substandard housing. At their conference in Liverpool, she committed to holding councils, housing associations and private landlords accountable for unsafe living conditions. And this comes after Labour MP Jaz Athwal breached child safety regulations as some of his nurseries were not fit for purpose. And while the proposed decent home standard will ensure rental properties meet minimum safety standards alongside new legislation, Awab's law, designed to tackle hazards like damp and mould. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time Labour took action against rogue landlords like Jaz Athwal, their very own MP? Joining me, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Right, I'm going to start with you. Danny Kelly.
Can I just say how resplendent you two look in Labour red? It could be a party of delegates here.
Well,
I've got another.
I'm hoping for some hope and vision from the Labour conference.
Jaz Atwell, the irony of this, so Angela Rayner going after rogue landlords, and there's probably one on the front row at the party delegates in Liverpool. He may be there for all I know. It's completely, the irony is tragic. There's something that is most un-Labour about owning 18 properties, by the way. That is true capitalism. That is sort of hoovering up properties that people may want to buy and renting them out to people who can't afford to buy them now because you've just pushed the prices up. Most un-Labour-like. Do we know that he knew they were vermin-infested and ant-infested?
Well, it was mouldy and ants.
That's correct.
Probably vermin as well. It's London.
Yeah, of course. So did he know? If he did know, then it's a scandal. You know, he should have done something. Maybe he was trying to cut corners and save money. I think when I heard him respond to this, I think he was distancing himself, saying, look, I have people who manage my rentals. But at some point, someone must have complained to the managers of those rentals, and they must have gone up to say, look, Mr. Atwell, you've got a problem with ants, you've got a problem with mould, you're going to have to spend a few quid. And at that point, I don't believe that he didn't know about it.
Well, that was not the only thing, though. So he was head of the council at the time. So before he was an MP, he was head of the council, and they introduced a licensing scheme. So all landlords had to have a licence for their properties. He did not have a licence for all of his properties. So there were, I think it's 7 properties where there was no licence. Now, if you pretend that you didn't know about the mould and everything else, You cannot pretend that one. Lizzie?
No, he knew. He didn't have a licence. It is despicable what he's done with his properties. Full of mould, damp, ants, pitiable. You know, he hasn't bothered. He doesn't care. And I'd say to Raina, you know, get your own house in order first. Have a look at your own. I mean, that is disgraceful. And I actually think he should have a big investigation into him. I think there'll be more about him. He's not honest. He's not done the right thing. And he puts a bad name onto landlords. Because there are some good landlords out there, and he gives a really bad rep.
Well, you see, it's people like that Angela Rayner is talking about.
Yeah, of course.
Which is fine, and I don't disagree with her when she talks about dealing with leaseholders and making sure that people have somewhere to live and getting rid of homelessness. Of course. I have no issue with that, but actions speak louder than words. And I'm listening to all the right things, but I'm not seeing any action at all.
It's hugely embarrassing for the Labour Party. They're trying to clean up the rental market and they've got a rogue landlord sitting in Parliament representing... It's true, though.
He's the biggest landlord in Parliament.
Talk about airing their dirty laundry in public. This is an example of what she's trying to stamp out. You know, you need to get your house in order. It's so embarrassing.
Why they need to have a look at themselves. It's so hypocritical. I can't get over. I keep wanting to give them a chance, but everything they do is just laughable. And I just think people aren't taking them seriously now. She needs to do something about this guy. It's dreadful what he's done.
You see, now I want to offer another perspective on this, but it's very difficult to do that when the leader or the Deputy Prime Minister is talking about an issue that is probably close to all of our hearts. And to be honest, we probably agree with initiatives to improve the housing rental market, but they are not doing what they're saying they want us to do.
No, they're not. And, you know, they say one thing and then they do another. They gave the Tory party so much stick, saying, oh, one rule for you and, you know, another for everyone else. Yet they're doing exactly the same, but I think worse, actually, because they pretend to be this, so good party.
Being a landlord, it's a business, isn't it? Like most businesses, you want to spend as little as possible. And I have a car business, and I apply the same logic. I want to keep my expenditure down to a minimum, but I need to make sure cars are safe, reliable and legal. But with landlords and properties, you're talking about people's health. Now, this law, I've forgotten the name of the poor child who died because of... Yeah, so we have a poor child who died because of these similar circumstances. Asthmatic and then breathing problems, poor little thing. So you deal, it's all very well. I could sell a car and it might break down 2 weeks later. No one's died. But we're talking about people... Of course not. But so long as I get the car prepared correctly on day one. But with a house, people are living in it. People are inhaling spores. And there's no excuse for that, I'm sorry. And so you need to sometimes stop thinking about the bottom line and start thinking about your customers.
But what we've got is a housing crisis and landlords are selling up. It's nearly 13% in 4 months. I've just gone.
They're worried about Labour.
They are worried about all the tax hikes. There's no tax breaks for them. What's in it for them? It's too much. And the government have got to do something about this because, you know, without landlords, where are the renters going to go anyway?
Well, there is an argument that... Sorry to interject. There is an argument that renters could actually buy these properties if it wasn't for the landlords. That takes me back to my earlier point.
But then the government and the council should do a scheme and come together and maybe look at the houses that are being, you know, because the landlords can't afford to keep them anymore.
Well, there may well be an argument for landlords leaving the business and everything, but the reason why many people rent is because they can't get a mortgage or the facility to do that is not available to them. So, and actually, some people prefer to rent anyway.
No, you're right. I'm not saying it's exclusive.
So the bottom line is, do as you say, or say as you do, not as you say, or whatever way around that phrase is. But you know what I mean? There's no point. You can't be taken seriously. And there's also she's also looking at employment law as well, and looking at getting rid of 0-hour contracts, which
a lot of people like.
I think because they've been out of the work environment for like 14 years, a lot of them have been in opposition for the full time, that they don't know that the work environment has actually changed substantially.
Yeah. So the workers are going to have more power than those employing them. It doesn't make sense. And the fact is, everything they do is hypocritical. I don't know how she can stand there and talk about Partygate when they've got the biggest scandal going on at the minute. It just brings attention to what they're doing.
May I say, Keir Starmer dodged a bullet when he was in the North East drinking beer and eating curry. I couldn't see anything that was dissimilar to Boris Johnson eating a slice of cake. I really couldn't. I said it at the time, Nana. The guy, the Waller who's in charge of the Police and Crime Commission is a Labour lad in the North East. And I said it at the time, Labour lad, Keir Starmer, nothing's going to happen.
Well, some people would argue that it was different, and what they would say is that Boris Johnson was almost like a systemic problem, and there was an ongoing thing. It wasn't just a one-off. Partygate was all the other things that were going on, Wallpapergate, Animalgate, all the other gates that came along. So some people would say that it was actually a rotten structure within the whole thing, and Beergate was just a one-off.
They would be correct, but
they might not be. They might not.
Well, in their view, they may be correct, but my point is that he got a ticket for that one occasion, that one incident. So you're right about all of the other things that undermined him, but he got a ticket for that one thing, eating a slice of cake.
Well, can I say,
no, I don't think he did.
If Labour keep going on about this 22 billion black hole, which I don't believe, because Rachel Reeves was asked to actually go through it, and she couldn't do that for the Financial Times. All they're doing is bringing it back onto themselves. They're going to talk about the Tories the last 14 years, Partygate. Everyone's looking at them going, hold on a minute, we've got Donorgate, we've got Wardrobe-gate, we've got the Arsenal Box-gate, we've got Spectacle-gate. I mean, how many more... scandals, really. Yeah, Lady Starmer.
People will get fed up of hearing 14 years Conservatives.
It's getting boring. And we need to look to the future. Change? What change? It seems to change for the worst.
Well, they said they'll get worse before they get better, so they're probably telling the truth there, aren't they?
Well, gloom and doom. Let's go back to Reform, their conference. It was high energy, it was positive. You know, everyone was up there. This one, everyone looks like they're on a Debbie Downer, aren't they? They're like, miserable.
Well, I suppose it's because this was meant to be a celebration of this great win that Keir Starmer achieved, and it is a big achievement to get a 158-seat majority. That's quite something, and have the amount of power that he has in Parliament.
I think it was a very low turnout.
Sorry, yeah, but that may be true, but the conference was meant to be a celebration of that, but unfortunately it has been overshadowed by all of this.
It is very dour up there in Liverpool.
It's not like the fanfare we had with Tony Blair got in, is it? It's hardly. It's kind of like very... on a budget. It's
the Reform thing was a lot more upbeat as well. You know, they had a good time. Politicians mustn't be embarrassed about the perception of letting their hair down and, you know, just being a man or a woman of the people. Like Farage, love or hate Farage, he's a man of the people. Yeah, and that's part of his success.
But also, I think they've got to read the room. They're not reading the room. When Starmer was tackled about all of these, you know, gifts he was getting, he was said fair dues. They don't seem to read the room. And there's Rayner going on about Partygate. You saw the audience just went quiet. They've had enough of hearing about it. And it just brings the scandal back to them, because everyone's saying, hold on a minute, you're in the papers for all the wrong reasons at the minute, Labour Party. You know, don't be going on about 14 years of Tory. Look at yourselves now, right now.
Well, the Tories are sort of hidden behind some rock somewhere. I don't know what. So that conference is coming soon, and my aim is to get to all of the different conferences. I did go to Reform. I will hope to try and get to the Labour Party conference as well, if they let me in.
Are you going up to Liverpool, are you?
Let me in.
Good luck.
Are you going up to the North West?
I would love to, yes. And obviously we had the Liberal Democrats conference earlier this month as well, which was... Ed Davey was very upbeat. Yeah. And he jet skied in, didn't he?
He did, indeed.
Liverpool's a great city, Nan. Have you been?
It's great fun.
I've been to Liverpool.
Brilliant city. Brilliant city. Much maligned in the 1980s and 90s.
Have I been
much maligned.
to Liverpool? What do you think? Of course I have.
It's a great city.
I'm wondering if you'll find Sue Gray. She's gone missing.
Was she not in the audience?
No, she's not there. No one can find her.
Really? Because of all the dough that she's on. She's in the news on the front page
again. Probably on holiday somewhere in the Caribbean with that money.
She may well be prepared to accept a reduction in her salary of the £3,000. I think there was a...
170.
She's hiding.
That. But anyway, what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. Get in touch. I'd love to hear your views. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Next, we'll cross over live to Tel Aviv. And as the IDF claim Hezbollah's leadership has almost been completely dismantled, we'll hear the thoughts of Uri Geller. But first, let's get your latest headlines with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 31 minutes past 3. The top story this hour. The Labour Party conference is underway in Liverpool, with Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner giving her opening speech earlier this morning. She addressed concerns around the party and hit out at the previous Conservative government. However, there will be questions for the party's leader, Sir Keir Starmer, following an Observer poll which has found he's now less popular than Rishi Sunak, with his personal rating dropping by 45 points since July. Well, earlier Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson's defended the Prime Minister and the plans for the government.
It feels at the minute that really a lot isn't working in our country. We are determined this week here in Liverpool to talk about the change that we're delivering on that will make a difference, that will bring some hope and optimism back. But absolutely fixing the foundations of our economy, stabilising our economy is absolutely crucial because everything else has to flow from that.
It's been reported that 4 people have been killed and dozens of others have been wounded in a mass shooting in Alabama. The Birmingham Police Department have said the attack took place in the 5 Points South area around 11 o'clock last night. Authorities also believe multiple shooters were involved, but no arrests have been made so far. And according to local media, responding officers found multiple victims at the scene. 3 were sadly pronounced dead, while a 4th later died at hospital. News from the Middle East, and Hezbollah say that they have entered a new phase of its battle with Israel, with the terror group's deputy leader describing it as an open-ended battle of reckoning. He made those comments during a funeral for a top commander killed in an Israeli strike on Beirut's southern suburbs. The service was to mark the deaths of Ibrahim Akil and for Hezbollah member Mahmoud Hamad. The 2 were killed in Friday's Israeli strike. The commemorations marking the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Arnhem have continued in the Netherlands today. This morning, veterans, armed forces personnel and the Princess Royal gathered at the Oosterbeek War Cemetery for the Airborne Memorial Service, with the event closed by a flypast from the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. Earlier, Her Royal Highness Princess Anne gave a reading to mark the 80th anniversary of Operation Market Garden.
He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust.
Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 4 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite an unsettled few days to come for many of us, with some heavy rain around. We've already seen some of that over the course of this afternoon. With low pressure moving into southern areas of the UK, that's feeding in those heavy pulses, even some thunderstorms around, and hail continuing on as we head into the first part of this evening. There is a rain warning in force to the rest of today for Wales, central southern areas of England, so do continue to take care. It is a little bit drier further towards the north, but quite cloudy across eastern coastal areas. That cloud beginning to move its way further inland, but we'll hold on to a few clear spells for parts of northwestern Scotland, and it could turn a little bit chilly here, but otherwise quite a mild night elsewhere. 15 or 16 degrees Celsius as the lows for many of us. An amber weather warning then comes into force at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, where we could see some particularly potentially very heavy rain. So do take care as you head out first thing on Monday morning, particularly across parts of Wales into the central region, parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire as well. A few sunny spells trying to break through for parts of eastern Northern Ireland into western Scotland, but generally it will be a cloudier start to the day here compared to some recent days. And we start to see some patchy rain moving into the far north of Scotland as well, that will slowly push its way southwards during the course of the day. But the real focus for that heavy rain is those central regions. Again, the amber weather warning in force for Lincolnshire into the Midlands areas, where there could be some localised flooding and disruption over the course of the day. Still, we'll see temperatures climb to around 20 degrees Celsius across the far south if we see some sunshine breaking its way through, but generally temperatures around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in the north. This rain will gradually move its way off towards the North Sea as we head throughout the end of Monday and in towards Tuesday, but things generally are set to remain fairly unsettled as we head over the course of the next coming week, with further rain and strong winds at times. And things will also be turning cooler for all of us, with temperatures dropping below average for the time of year by the end. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 37 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, welcome. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. And don't forget to download the GB News app. You can watch all of the programmes on Catch Up and watch everything that happens across the day live. Now, tensions in the Middle East continue as the IDS has struck around 110 Hezbollah terrorist targets across southern Lebanon. It comes as the IDF claimed to have almost completely dismantled Hezbollah's leadership in an airstrike on Beirut yesterday, which Lebanon's health minister said claimed 37 lives. And with a week of explosions of pagers and radios, and is the situation getting out of control? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, what do the Lebanon pager attacks mean for the Middle East conflict? Well, joining me now, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. See, I almost forgot. Lizzie Cundy, let's go to you. This incredibly targeted attack. I would say some people say it's indiscriminate. I think it was very discriminate attack on Hezbollah operatives.
It was unbelievable. I mean, it was quite something. It was something like you'd seen a movie, really, like a James Bond thing. But it shows that the different sides of war, and sadly, that's what we're in and we're witnessing. But it is quite frightening what you can do. I just couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. And I just worry how we're going to... Everyone keeps saying we need a ceasefire, we need a ceasefire. But how are we going to do this? How are we ever going to end this war? It just seems to be escalating by the day. Very frightening.
Perhaps if they hand back the hostages and perhaps if Hamas stopped firing the rockets over Israel. Danny Kelly.
Do you know, when I heard this story, I thought how terrible it was, because I just imagined lots of other people having pages. And then I got a reality check and thought no one has pages unless they're part of Hezbollah.
Exactly. Well, let's go live now, discuss these developments with performer and mystifier Uri Geller. Uri Geller? Uri, sorry. Rhymes with jelly, but it's not Uri Geller, it's Uri Geller. Uri, thank you so much for joining me. It's really good to talk to you. I finally met him in real life, which was an absolute honour. You're back in Israel now. Talk to me, Uri. Tell me all about this. What's on your mind?
OK, look, Nana, first of all, it was amazing to meet you, too. What has happened in this region in the past few days is unbelievable. Hezbollah got the biggest shock ever. Thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies exploded all at the same time, killing and maiming thousands of Hezbollah terrorists. Look, apparently, and this is very sad, 2 children were killed. And that is a tragedy. But the blame for that lies with Hezbollah. If you live as a terrorist, you're putting civilians at great risk. Of course, there is only one intelligence agency which could have pulled off something like this, and that is Israel's Mossad. Israel's Mossad. Look, Nana, I cannot find the words to describe what a stunning, mind-blowing, ingenious operation this was. If it is the Mossad, this is one of the most incredible things it has ever done. This is a modern-day version of the Trojan horse. Nana, in one fell swoop, Israel has knocked out thousands of terrorists and caused pandemonium against Hezbollah. Look, Nana, let's face it. It's hard to press a button to launch a terrorist rocket if you don't have hands or eyes. These people are now too afraid to even look, switch on an electric toothbrush. And once more, I want to repeat this. If Mossad blew up the pagers in Lebanon, then this was a stunning masterpiece of ingenuity. Let me continue now on something totally different. Many people, some people are pathetic people. They have said it's a war crime. Come on, Nana. These people are not, I mean, do not know what they're talking about. This is a war crime. These devices were terrorist objects, period. Israel is now hitting Hezbollah hard every day. Just 2 days ago, we took out 15 Hezbollah commanders in one attack. One attack. They were planning a murderous, I'll repeat that, a murderous 7th of October style invasion of northern Israel. Killing again civilians, babies, women, God knows. So do not feel sorry for any of them. But Nana, we assume the Mossad planted bombs in the pagers. But let me give you something to think about, and this might freak you out. When the CIA was testing my psychic powers in the 70s, they wanted to see what I could do with the power of my mind. They wanted to know if I could stop the heart of a pig. They actually brought a pig into the room, in the experimentation room. Of course, I refused. I'm also a vegan. But Nana, psychic warfare is a very real thing. No one knows how these pages were triggered. All at once? Come on. You hear what I'm saying? I can't say anything more. What I can say is I love you all, God bless you all, and positive energy from the Holy Land.
Uri Geller, stay safe. Those are the thoughts of the brilliant Uri Geller. So that's his view, but what's yours? gbnews.com/your say. We'll be continuing the Great British Debate on that discussion. Do not go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle is finding it very, very difficult to recruit staff for her lifestyle brand, which is called American Riviera Orchard. There's a mouthful for you. Apart from a jam gifted to influencers earlier this year, the brand is yet to launch any products.
Well, let's speak to our US royal and showbiz reporter, Kinsey Schofield. Good morning to you, Kinsey. Who's going to want that gig?
I mean, there are rumors that Netflix has said, allow us to manage the retail strategy. If she can't manage to find a CEO or somebody willing to work with her, Netflix sees an opportunity there.
To be an influencer, people have got to want to be like you. Do people like her?
I mean, this has been her biggest issue in the last few years, is realizing that there's been a shift when it comes to their popularity. Harry and Meghan believed their own hype when they said on that Netflix series that the reason they were ostracized was because they were much more popular than the British royals. They were more popular than Prince William, more popular than Princess Kate. And their popularity has declined immensely. And now they are desperate to win people over again.
Most people have to be liked or admired, and I put it to you, Kinsey, she'll have difficulty on both fronts.
Netflix is not going to renew this contract. I mean, they are fearful that this cooking show, this polo show, will not connect with the audience. And now they want us to believe that Meghan is at home cooking all this banana bread and having her best friend Chrissy Teigen over for scones. People aren't going to buy it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All right, so it is time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, were the pages a mark of genius or a war crime? Joining me now, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. OK, Lizzie Cundy, a lot of people saying it's a war crime.
I think it's genius. It is how they did this, because they...
People died.
It's terrible, but sadly in war, people die. That's and it's tragic, but they are terrorists. And that we can't forget what happened on the 7th of October. I've got a friend who was actually affected. Her friend's daughter was taken on that dreadful morning, and waking up to that news, you just couldn't believe it. And sadly, no, sadly not. And when it's right, she'll tell her story. But it is shocking what's gone on. I feel for... you can't help, your heart goes out to Gaza with all what's gone on, because sadly, innocent people get affected by war. That's what war is.
But the
pages, I have to say, because they were, using their smartphones, thinking they were getting, listened into. It was very clever. They said, "Oh, use the pages. No one can trace us with these." And look what Israel did. It was genius.
Danny Kelly.
The ingenuity behind it is remarkable.
Yeah.
And if it's a war crime, well, there'll be learned scholars who'll be able to define what a war crime is, so I don't have that answer for you.
In your view,
Well, if they targeted... As I said to you earlier, when I first heard that thousands of pages were exploding at the same time, obviously there was a phone call, there was some electronic message... bang, everything blows up. I thought that was awful in the sense that there'll be lots of other people walking around Lebanon with these pages. Then I thought to myself, nobody uses pages unless they're part of this group. And so my position changed dramatically. And my position changed, well, look, if we take Israel's word for it, and Mossad, the brains behind the operation, so we believe that the people who had a pager... And why would you have a pager if you weren't in contact with the bosses at Hezbollah? You'd only have a pager if they trusted you. And they will only trust you and give you a pager if you're part of that group.
And they didn't trust the smartphones, though. They didn't trust...
That's because they could be tracked.
But if it is correct that Israel actually made these from
It's unbelievable.
Scratch, how they did this.
It's unbelievable. The planning must have taken years. You've got to buy a factory, you've got to put someone in the factory, you've got to get explosives. I think it was Hungary, was it?
Bulgaria, I think, wasn't it?
It depends whether there were explosives in there or there's some other thing that activated it, and they don't quite know yet.
Oh, I thought it was military-grade explosives.
But if it was, and some people are saying that it's in the lithium battery, but that hasn't been explained yet, then we need to be very afraid of electric cars. And I'm not saying that, they'll blow up, but they have been known to do that anyway. But they're safe at the moment. But the point is that if a device can be infiltrated like that through a lithium battery, then anything that is requires a lithium battery is a potential explosive.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've got to look at this, how at the different... we think of war, we're thinking of, like the Ukraine, the military, with guns. This is a different kind of war. The technology that's gone behind it, the ingenuity. It is, in some respects, genius. It is something like
genius,
a James Bond movie. Though it's very sad that there's loss of life, but that sadly there is in every war.
But Lisa says here, ingenious masterstroke. So some people think it's ingenious. I was listening to, I'm pretty sure it was Annalise Dodd saying, we'll send out aid to all those who've been affected and And of course you want to help people, but at the end of the day, if this was specifically targeted, and it was a targeted attack at terrorists,
very much so, yeah.
Then they're terrorists.
Yeah.
Most people who died were terrorists, or who got injured or got hurt were terrorists.
Yeah.
So they're in war. As much as I don't want death, I want the war to stop. This is the most targeted you could possibly be. Otherwise, you're talking about a missile that could affect people who've got nothing to do with it, people who support the cause of Israel and so on. This is targeting people who are carrying Hezbollah pages.
Yeah. And they have said openly they want the death of every Jew. They've said that. Hezbollah. And it's, this is war. This is the sad consequences of war. But this is a masterstroke. How Israel have managed to do this, it's unbelievable.
If you think about it, my understanding is slightly different with the lithium. My understanding was that there were very small amounts of military-grade explosives. My other understanding is that there were thousands of pages. Now, if you just take a moment to think about it, if the reports are correct that they came from a factory in Eastern Europe somewhere, I think you said Bulgaria, my understanding is Hungary. So they must have travelled over to Hungary to implant these pages, knowing that they had the contract with Hezbollah, knowing that Hezbollah ordered that, because they couldn't just send them to to, like, Curry's on the high streets. They couldn't get it wrong.
No.
They had to send them to Hezbollah. So the amount of planning and the people involved with this, how did they know that Hezbollah were going to order 2,000 pages from a place in Hungary? At the same time, they actually impregnated the pages with things. It's incredible.
It's incredible, but they knew that they weren't trusting the smartphones and they were going to use the pages. But how they did this,
and then
it was...
Also, Lizzie, because they all went off at the same time, so someone must have, again, impregnated technology that said when we make a phone call and we give that page a specific message, it had to be a specific message. Otherwise, they'd have been blowing up
I think we've got
months
to remember
before.
Hezbollah and Hamas are terrorists.
All right, well, lots of
we've
people
got to remember
have been
that.
getting in touch.
Yeah.
Catherine said, well, Miss Cundy, we are not going to get a ceasefire with terrorists. And I think she makes a good point there, Catherine, because Catherine's making a good point that any reasonable person would probably say, yes, time for a ceasefire, but these aren't reasonable people, are they?
We could have a ceasefire right now if Hamas gave back the terrorists,
and
hostages, and gave up their arms, but they're not willing to do that. And there was a ceasefire up until the 7th of October. They decided to do what they did.
Right, well, Benny says, when terrorists start complaining about you, you know you're doing something right. Terrorists are complaining.
Did Uri Geller say that they've just stopped another copycat October the 7th in northern Israel?
That's what he said.
Yes.
Is that right?
He said they've just stopped another...
What, going to fly over again and start massacring people?
Well, I don't know, but that's through his information. Obviously, we can't verify that, but those are his views, and he is there.
He's there, yeah.
Catherine says, go Israel, more of this, please. Tony says, I'm sure Atwell, as a registered agency, this is about Jazz Atwell, after 18 properties in order to take deposits and rents. If the tenants were on benefits, the council would have been paying. So how does that work? No inspections? Ooh, doesn't sound right to me. Richard says, pager wars, brilliant, wonderful. What an audacious, spectacular way to neutralise a ferocious terrorist enemy. And then Grumpy Grandad says, I think Israel got it right on this occasion. They can't call it a war crime. Could you imagine if they used the missiles and bombs to take the same people out? Thousands of innocent people would have been killed. The only people that are these pagers were linked to terrorists, and that's why they had them. Yes, it's really sad 2 kids were killed, but it could have been so much worse. Yeah, that's true.
It's very true, actually.
I think that's a balanced response.
Look, sadly, in war, innocent people die, and that is the tragedy of war.
Yeah. So the 2 young kids, they must have been like children of the terrorists or something near the pages, or...
Yeah, I think one was bringing the pager to her dad or something. So it's really sad. But again, it's not a carpet bomb of lots of people. It's a targeted attack. And I don't think you could... Israel, I do believe, have done everything they can to try and minimise casualties. That, in my view, but there are obviously horrors with war.
It is affecting us as well, because I was talking to a pal who works for the Royal Mail who puts stuff on aircraft, and they're not allowing pages on aircraft, certain airlines.
Oh. All right, well, listen, next, my monologue on Angela Rayner. Yes, my thoughts on, well, in my view, actions speak louder than words. She's saying all the right things, but will they actually follow through with proper, precise action? This is GB News. Let's get an update with your weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite an unsettled few days to come for many of us, with some heavy rain around. We've already seen some of that over the course of this afternoon. With low pressure moving into southern areas of the UK, that's feeding in those heavy pulses, even some thunderstorms around, and hail continuing on as we head into the first part of this evening. There is a rain warning in force to the rest of today for Wales, central southern areas of England, so do continue to take care. It is a little bit drier further towards the north, but quite cloudy across eastern coastal areas. That cloud beginning to move its way further inland, but we'll hold on to a few clear spells for parts of northwestern Scotland, and it could turn a little bit chilly here, but otherwise quite a mild night elsewhere, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius as the lows for many of us. An amber weather warning then comes into force at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, where we could see some potentially very heavy rain. So do take care as you head out first thing on Monday morning, particularly across parts of Wales into the central region, parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire as well. A few sunny spells trying to break through for parts of eastern Northern Ireland into western Scotland, but generally it will be a cloudier start to the day here compared to some recent days. And we start to see some patchy rain moving into the far north of Scotland as well, that will slowly push its way southwards during the course of the day. But the real focus for that heavy rain is those central regions. Again, the amber weather warning in force for Lincolnshire into the Midlands areas, where there could be some localised flooding and disruption over the course of the day. Still, we'll see temperatures climb to around 20 degrees Celsius across the far south if we see some sunshine breaking its way through, but generally temperatures around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in the north. This rain will gradually move its way off towards the North Sea as we head throughout the end of Monday and in towards Tuesday, but things generally are set to remain fairly unsettled as we head over the course of the next coming week with further rain and strong winds at times, and things will also be turning cooler for all of us with temperatures dropping below average for the time of year by the end. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's yours, it's mine, and of course it's theirs, the panellists. Joining me today in the next 2 hours, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and author Lizzie Cundy. On today's show... Hang on a minute. On today's show, we'll be discussing lots of things. I forgot me. On today's show, the Labour Party kick off with their conference in Liverpool. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner delivered her keynote speech, fighting back tears as she took to the stage amid her party freebies. To the Tory leadership race, where former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has revealed dozens of terror suspects have crossed the Channel in small boats. I want to know, would a Tory deal with reform save the Conservatives? And for the interview, ex-gangster turned CEO Steven Gillan, once one of the UK's most wanted London gang members, now determined to help others to avoid going down the same path. All of that coming up, but first let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 2 minutes past 4. The top story, we start in Liverpool, where the Deputy Prime Minister has said now is Labour's moment as she took to the stage at the party's annual conference, pledging to bolster workers' rights, to create high-quality homes and strengthen communities. Angela Rayner outlined those plans in her opening speech in Liverpool this morning. But it comes as the party is still mired in a row over gifts to senior MPs and questions about the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff.
There will be no complacency. We've seen where that leads. Don't forget what they did. Partygate, COVID contracts, the lies, division, scapegoating and the unfunded tax cuts for the richest that crashed our economy. Don't forget any of it. The Tories failed Britain and they tried to cover it up. A crater in the heart of Britain's economy, a puncher in the pocket of every working family, and a £22 billion black hole.
It could also be trouble for Sir Keir Starmer elsewhere in the UK, as the SNP's Westminster leader Stephen Flynn has said that the new Prime Minister is failing to deliver on the change he promised Scotland in the general election. He claims that despite the SNP being willing to work with Labour, that Sir Keir is completely out of touch with Scotland and the issues the country faces. It comes after the Prime Minister's already faced criticism over cuts to the winter fuel allowance and his acceptance of clothing donations. Well, earlier, our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire asked the people of Glasgow if they feel Sir Keir is delivering.
In 3 months, give or take, this Labour government, how do you think they're performing for Scotland?
1 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah.
Again, why?
I'm a pensioner. They've taken my winter fuel allowance and it's wrong.
I had high hopes for Keir Starmer and no, it's all gone.
Has there been any? I haven't really noticed much, to be honest.
I'm ashamed to say I'm a Glaswegian, really, when I see the state of the place. And if that's 13 years of SNP, we're in big, big trouble. Well, no, we might be out of the trouble now with the Labour in. I don't know. Just a matter of wait and see.
Elsewhere in politics, Reform's leader, Nigel Farage, sat down with GBNews political editor Chris Hope at their party conference yesterday. Speaking on Chopper's political podcast, Mr Farage said in order for Reform to make an impact at the local elections next May, the party will have to complete 10 years of evolution in the next 6 months. However, that hasn't stopped him from setting quite the target.
We've got enough people to have 2,300 candidates. The question is, are they the right 2,300 candidates? Because we will be held to a higher standard than everybody else. I'm aiming in those elections to win hundreds of seats.
And you can catch the full interview there with Nigel Farage wherever you get your podcast. Just search for Chopper's Political Podcast. 31 people have been arrested in a nationwide Home Office crackdown on people smuggling gangs. The 3-day operation involving the National Crime Agency, police and international partners targeted locations including Belfast, Liverpool and Luton. During those raids, over £400,000 of criminal cash and 10 fraudulent identity documents were seized. That was during checks at ports, at airports and road networks. Minister for Border Security, Dame Angela Eagle, says the government is cracking down on criminal gangs, exploiting vulnerable people, risking lives, and she says profiting from despair. Just a quick breaking line from Greater Manchester Police. We're hearing that a second man has been arrested over what police there are saying is a shocking kidnap of an 87-year-old man in Oldham. The pensioner was reportedly dragged into a black car, attacked and then dumped miles from his home, leading to serious injuries. Police say he found help by knocking on a door after the ordeal. 2 men, aged 24 and 39, have been arrested on suspicion of kidnap. One of them has already been released on bail. Detectives are now urging the public to provide any footage that could help solve the case. Turning to the US, and it's been reported that 4 people have been killed, dozens of others left wounded in a mass shooting in Alabama. The Birmingham Police Department have said the attack took place in 5 Points South, the area around 11 o'clock last night. Authorities also believe that multiple shooters were involved, but no arrests have yet been made. According to local media, responding officers found multiple victims at the scene. 3 sadly were pronounced dead and a 4th later died in hospital. In the Middle East, the Foreign Secretary has said there needs to be an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. That's following what he's described as a worrying escalation. David Lammy says the ongoing hostilities are in nobody's interest and has advised British nationals in Lebanon to now leave. It comes as Hezbollah's deputy leader said the terror group is now in an open-ended battle of reckoning with Israel. And he made those comments during a funeral for a top commander who was killed in an Israeli strike on Friday. And finally, some brighter news. They've always been there for us. Well, that's for the past 3 decades at least, as today marks the 30th birthday of one of the most iconic series of all time. Yes, it is Friends. The show premiered for the first time back in the US in 1994, fast becoming one of NBC's most watched programmes and lasting for 10 series. I would say I remember the launch of Friends, but I was just being born in 1994. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? Welcome. It's 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, this morning, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner spoke really eloquently about how change now begins.
Party, the discipline to make hard decisions and the determination to remain united. And now change begins. Even now, especially now, there will be no complacency. We've seen where that leads. Don't forget what they did. Partygate, COVID contracts, the lies, division, scapegoating and the unfunded tax cuts for the richest that crashed our economy. Don't forget any of it. The Tories failed Britain and they tried to cover it up. A crater in the heart of Britain's economy, a puncher in the pocket of every working family, and a £22 billion black hole. And not...
Right, she then makes a joke about Kemi Badenoch and David Tennant.
At conference, at least after 3 months of shadow housing secretary, she's finally expressed a concern about a tenant. It's just a pity it's David Tennant.
Very funny. It wasn't he, David Tennant, wishing for a world where Kemi Badenoch didn't exist. Angela Rayner claimed change has begun.
No more talking, but doing. 80 days in government, and we've been busy. A devolution revolution, a bill to deliver new rights and protections for renters, planning reform to get Britain building, a landmark review to fix our NHS, a child poverty task force, 100 new specialist officers to tackle criminals, an end to one-word Ofsted inspections, ending the ban on onshore wind and fines for bosses who pollute our waters, bills to kickstart Great British Energy and to prevent another Liz Truss disastrous mini-budget, put buses in local hands and bring rail into public ownership. Conference change has begun.
Yep, that raid on private schools, stripping our poorest pensioners of their winter fuel allowance, people selling up in fear of Rachel Reeves' budget in October, investors leaving in their droves, and debt to GDP at 100%, which it wasn't 80 days ago. She talks about homelessness and her renters' bill.
Long-term plan will free leaseholders from the tyranny of a medieval system. And a cross-government task force will put Britain back on track to ending homelessness. Whether you're a leaseholder, a tenant, a home buyer, or without somewhere to live, this government...
So how are they going to do that?
This is why today I want to give you my promise that this Labour government will take action to ensure that all homes are decent and safe, and residents are treated with the respect that they deserve. And conference, of course, many housing associations, councils and landlords do good by their tenants. And I know how hard they've had it after 14 years under the Tories, which is why I will work in partnership with the sector to deliver the change.
OK, well, what about Jazz Athwell? I know I've been banging on about it for a while. Whilst this is all very nice, Angela, and you speak a lot of sense on many subjects, actions speak louder than words. Jazz, the MP for Ilford South, we've been talking about it, the biggest landlord in the Commons with 15 properties. When he was head of the council, he set up a licensing scheme for all landlords, but unfortunately he didn't bother getting licences for all of his properties.
We'll clamp down on damp and mouldy homes by bringing Arab law into the social renter sector this autumn, and we'll extend it to the private rented sector too.
OK, yeah, again, what are you going to do about Jazz Athwell if you're that bothered about mouldy homes and all of that? The Labour MP Jazz Athwell has not yet been punished for mouldy, ant-infested properties. Now, I'm not sure how Angela can say all of that in her speech with a straight face. They haven't even removed the whip from this MP. He's still a Labour MP and has received no real punishment whatsoever. And now an issue with the nurseries that he owns. If they really want us to take them seriously, actions speak louder than words. Right, so before we get stuck into the debates, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Rachel Reeves' upcoming budget scrap foreign aid to fill the black hole? It's the big question of not just the current Conservative leadership election, but also the next general election. Can the Tories deal with Nigel Farage? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would a Tory deal with Reform save the Conservative Party? And for the interview, I'll be joined by ex-gangster turned CEO Steven Gillan, once one of the UK's most wanted London gang members, now determined to help others avoid going down a criminal path. We'll be talking about Labour's early prison release scheme as well with him. All of that coming up. As ever, don't forget to send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/yoursay. So with the Labour Party conference in Liverpool well underway and with accusations of turmoil in Number 10 and the sleaze row just won't go away, what must Keir Starmer do over the next few days to ease the minds of supporters? Well, joining me now, live from Liverpool, is GBNews' Tom Harwood. Tom, so how is the conference going? Is there a positive energy, full vibe there?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Nana, that the party has won a massive and handsome electoral victory just 2 months ago. But of course, there is some scandal that is miring the background of this conference. The person who is in all of the papers at the moment, Sue Gray, the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, hasn't turned up to this conference. Perhaps a wise move to stay away. And I have to say, we've all just been rained on pretty heavily. I've only just sort of dried off to be able to come back in here and clean up. But that aside, there has been some substantive work going on at this conference. One of the speeches earlier, of course, was from the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy. To discuss it now, I'm delighted to be joined by someone from the Labour Foreign Policy Group. Yes, delighted to be joined right here in the studio. Let's talk straight away about what the challenge is for David Lammy, because this is a very difficult issue, particularly with regards to the Middle East, and Labour has a balancing act to perform.
Exactly, and I think that that's very right. But we have to remember that Labour came into power only a few months ago, and so they're just trying to get their feet sort of under the table. And as we can see, David Lammy has been not only to Europe, but to the US and also to the region. And he's trying to do this diplomatic outreach to try and make people understand that Britain's back in business, especially when it comes to diplomacy.
There's a very difficult issue, though, with regard to what is going on with this sort of halfway house of preventing arms sales to Israel. Some arms sales being withdrawn, but not all of them. It runs the risk of irritating both sides of that debate.
I mean, I think with arms sales, that goes back to our human rights laws, and if anything violates our human rights laws, those are the decisions that the government has to take by law, because we are signed up to these conventions on the international stage, and therefore we have to follow those. And yes, it's a balancing act. You're not going to make everyone happy, but I think that means that you're doing something right. If both sides are sort of angry at you.
Does it really, is it the place of Britain to try and solve this issue? Do we have that influence in the Middle East? Of course, 100 years ago, we ran the place, but not so much now.
I think, if we look at our history, we should realise that we have a responsibility to that history. And people actually look to Britain now for answers and solutions. Britain is a leader on the global stage, and I think that it plays a really important role. And I think that we are able to do that with David Lammy as Foreign Secretary and the wider Foreign Office team. You have Hamish Faulkner, who's the new Middle East and North Africa Minister with a lot of experience in the Foreign Office and who understands these issues. So I think that we're talking to people that understand these issues, not just from ground communities, but also from their own professional experience prior to government.
And it is, of course, a vital relationship, that between the United States and the United Kingdom. David Lammy has been over to the States. He's been over to Ukraine with Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State. And yet behind the scenes, we've heard a lot of briefing that the relationship isn't potentially as strong, especially with regard to this blind sight that the Americans felt over the arms sales restrictions. How is the American relationship playing out?
I mean, I don't think that there is any difficulty in that relationship. I think we'll have to wait and see what happens in the US elections to try and renew any type of forward-facing policy, especially when it comes to the Middle East. But I think these briefings are from disgruntled individuals who probably don't want to see Britain at its best.
There is, of course, a lot of rumour about David Lammy's place in the cabinet should Donald Trump win in the United States in November. Might he not be Foreign Secretary for that long, or what do you make of those rumours?
No, I mean, look at what J.D. Vance has said about Donald Trump. The fact that Donald Trump can pick someone as his vice president who actually said horrible things about him, I don't think we have anything to worry, and I think David Lammy will be Foreign Secretary for the foreseeable future.
Whether or not Trump is president.
Whether or not Trump is president.
And it's going to be difficult for the Labour Party to try and make that relationship work if, of course, the Republicans regain the presidency. A lot of people on the front bench, a lot of people in the cabinet have had some pretty choice words to say, and were pretty disparaging of the previous government when they tried to work with a Trump presidency. Would there be some humble pie to be eaten if the shoe was on the other foot?
Well, I think that regardless, this is a choice for the American people. Whoever they vote in as president, the United Kingdom will have to work with them. And I think that the Foreign Office and the Foreign Secretary will do its best to try and make that relationship work, even if there have been difficult things said in the past. I think that we're looking to the future and we're moving forward, change in action.
And just finally, how have you felt the mood of this conference to be? Of course, the Labour Party is in government. It's the largest parliamentary majority in decades. And yet, there's quite a bit of scandal, quite a bit of negative press.
I mean, aside from the negative press, I think those briefings, I think most people are ignoring them. I think the people here are really serious about getting things done. I mean, as a local councillor and also someone who runs an organisation, the Labour Foreign Policy Group, we're putting on a range of events, having a range of discussions around foreign policy. We're looking for action, and we're hoping that that action is delivered by our ministers, our new ministers. And I don't think that we're really paying attention to any of the negative briefing. I think now we want that the results delivered on the ground.
Well, Peymana Assad, Labour councillor and indeed chair of the Labour Foreign Policy Group, thank you so much for joining us here on GB News. Back to you, Nana.
Peymana Assad, thank you very much. Right, well, stay with me. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Rachel Reeves' budget scrap foreign aid to fill the black hole?
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
EasyJet is launching a new recruitment drive focused on attracting cabin crew members over 50 and those even considering retirement.
Well, the initiative is called Returnships and is inspired by research that suggests that 75% of people over 50 years old believe that now is the ideal time to embark on a new career.
Joining us now to discuss what it takes to embark on a second career as cabin crew is Helen Williams. Good morning, Helen.
Hi, good morning, Helen.
Welcome. Just touching down in our studio.
It is. I've had a few days off and now I'm here.
So you are now cabin crew.
I am.
What inspired you to get into it? What did you do before? How did it all come around?
Oh, so when I graduated, I took an office job with my grad scheme, and that job lasted 6 months, and I started working for a European carrier. I did just over 5 years at that European carrier and had an absolutely fabulous time. I then went on to a wet lease operation with an Irish carrier and another mainline UK carrier. I then decided to have time out. I had a business, I had a family, I had children, and last autumn I decided, why not? Let's go back and do it all again. So returning to that European carrier that I'd worked at when I was in my early 20s.
And what is that like for you now, returning that bit older, having that life experience, having your children? Do you think that's been a benefit to you?
It's absolutely been a benefit. I mean, the amount of parents that thank me for helping me with their small children when they're crying on a flight. I am that person now.
When you went back for a second time,
Yeah.
did you notice more sort of older people amongst your sort of colleagues?
I did. So when I returned onto my initial course in March of this year, just over half the course were over the age of 30.
Wow.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was expecting to return and be with a lot of younger, 18, 19, 24. I was expecting to be that dinosaur. And that first day of training, to find out that I wasn't the dinosaur, you have no idea how exciting that was. And they've gone on, that particular group, to be phenomenal crew members.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome. Nana Nicey here. See, I'm not being horrible. If you just tuned in, where have you been? I couldn't resist. 23 minutes after 4 o'clock, we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. This is GB News. Now it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Rachel Reeves's budget scrap foreign aid to fill the black hole, or part of it at least? The UK so far has spent £12.8 billion to Ukraine, £7.8 billion in military support and £5 billion in non-military support. But international charities have warned the UK that UK aid spending will fall to its lowest level since 2007 unless the government takes urgent action in next month's budget. But what is expected to be a cost-cutting budget for the Great British Debate, I'm asking you, perhaps they could cut these costs and perhaps maybe scrap foreign aid to help fill that black hole. Well, joining me now, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and commentator Lizzie Cundy. You've turned into a commentator now. I'm going to start with you, Danny Kelly.
Yeah, it's easy to be critical of how foreign aid is spent. I have 3 examples, and there are always these examples that make people stand up and think about, oh, should we? Chinese opera. We funded a Chinese opera about 10 years ago. Cycle lanes in Mexico. Road schemes in Malaysia. There's also an argument that the more money you throw at poverty, the less inclined they are to generate their own wealth. And if you think about it, that is fairly logical. We're also chucking millions and billions of pounds at some of the most corrupt regimes on planet Earth. And we mustn't shy away from being truthful with that. There's been documented cases where prime ministers have pocketed millions of pounds in foreign aid. So when you are looking at so many billion pounds, and then we look at our pensioners, at £1.4 billion pensioners, we are thinking to ourselves, why don't we just look after our pensioners? Some of the most vulnerable people in society.
Well, currently foreign aid is about £7.2 billion, and £2 billion of that is spent on housing the migrants and stuff like that, so we've used...
That's right.
Exactly.
Domestically.
Listen, Starmer, stop acting like Jack the Lad in your freebie suit. You need to look at this and look at this properly. It needs a total rehaul. This, first of all, the big black hole, the 22 billion black hole, I don't believe it. I want to know the evidence. I want to see the facts of this, the details. Rachel Reeves refused to do that. We haven't had any details of it. I don't believe there is this huge 22 billion black hole. That they've decided their political choice to favour the unions and give as much, as they wanted with no, strings attached. And
But their argument is that the reason they've done that is because it was cheaper to actually pay off the demand rather than the billions being spent, which was being spent with people not working and being lost in the economy.
I don't agree with that, because with that you're going to get everyone else coming out of the woodwork wanting their bit. If they're getting it, we want it. And for them to do this to our own pensioners who've worked hard all their lives, I think it's disgraceful that my mum has got to do a coffee morning to raise money for some of her friends that are so frightened of this coming winter months. This is what this government is doing, and I think it's a disgrace. So Starmer, getting all your freebies and everything else, get with the real world and look what's going on, because it's hypocritical.
But their argument is your mum is one of those millionaire pensioners in their minds, possibly property rich or whatever. That's how they're seeing it. And they in their view, as my understanding it is, that these people have quite broad shoulders.
You see, that is misleading, because people may live in properties worth £500,000, or £1 million, because properties have gone up exponentially, but that doesn't mean that they've got 10 grand in their bank. Older people, and I'm sorry to just generalise about older people, my beloved 91-year-old father, who is one of your many #1 fans, will be watching this, and my 82-year-old mother will be glued to the television. Now, they won't miss the 300 quid, but some of the people down their street may be too proud to ask their kids. They may say, because older people, and I'm speaking generally, and it's probably a negative stereotype, but the older you get, the less likely you are to ask for help, because that generation was a proud generation.
Of course. Exactly. And how can they justify giving what they're giving to foreign, like the climate crisis overseas is 11.3 billion, you know, foreign aid, 9 billion. We know the first order of any government is to look after your own people, its own people. They are not doing that. And I think it's disgraceful what they're doing to the pensioners. And, you know, that pensioners are going to worry, you know they feel the cold more, and, you know, this wonderful channel here has had to do their own funding to help them. You know, what is going on? And yet they are the left. They can preach. And what upsets me with Starmer, what he did, if you remember, with Boris, he talked about Elsie on the bus going around to keep warm.
No, I don't even want to hear another story about Elsie.
And you know what? He's forgotten about Elsie.
He's not forgotten about Elsie, but perhaps he could give Elsie some of the clothes that he's got to get so Elsie can keep warm, and Rachel Reeves can do the same, because she got about £7,500 worth of clothing.
To address your question about foreign aid, I would be an advocate of them chiselling away £1.4 billion of foreign aid and to reinstate the pensioners 300 quid. That's what I would support, so that you still give a chunk of dough. I'm worried about some of the corrupt countries and the money and who funnels it here, left, right, wherever. That worries me.
Yeah, but
our pensioners need it.
Well, the problem we have here, and my issue with this whole foreign aid thing, is that our GDP to debt ratio is 100%. So when the Labour Party got into power, it was about 97%, but now it's 100%. So what we are making and also what we are spending is equal. So there is nothing left. There is no free money. So my point here is that we can't afford it. The country's broke. So I don't see why, if I were broke, I wouldn't be giving out to people elsewhere. So I think we need to apply logic to this and look after the people in this country. And I'm incandescent with rage, as you can see. I can barely speak when it comes to the pensioners and the winter fuel allowance.
I totally agree with you, Nana. And as I said, the first order of any government is to look after its own people. Why are they giving out these huge amounts, as you said, to countries like China? It does not make sense. And this government, I really sadly believe they don't know what they're doing, and they're out of depth.
Well, you know, we shall see how they go on. They've only been on for about 80 days. And
it's a disastrous start now.
But a lot of people are saying there are still supporters within the Labour Party and around the Labour Party who feel that they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And there are some people who believe that lots of the pensioners are wealthy enough and that should be taken into account, and that perhaps it should be means tested.
I think the overall consensus is that they've shot themselves in the foot with this pensioner thing.
Correct.
That's the overall consensus. Yes, there are millionaires who don't need the 300 quid. My mum and dad aren't millionaires, but they don't need the 300 quid. But there'll be people down their street that are desperately short of dough.
Exactly, and there'll be a lot of their members there today at the conference that will not be agreeing with them. And he's very, very quiet, Keir Starmer. He's not parading and doing a lot of interviews.
Well, he will be soon. He will be speaking soon at that conference. I don't think it's today, but we'll obviously keep you up to date with all of the action there. So it's coming up to 31 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, it's the big question of not just the current Conservative leadership election, but the next general election. election. Can the Tories deal with Nigel Farage? First, though, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just coming up to 32 minutes past 4. The top story, we start in Liverpool, where Labour needs to break the cycle of chaos, according to the party's outgoing General Secretary. Speaking at the party's conference in Liverpool, David Evans said Labour must never lose touch with voters following its general election victory. It comes, though, as questions mount for Sir Keir Starmer following an Observer poll which has found he's now less popular than Rishi Sunak, with his personal rating dropping by 45 points. Earlier Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has defended the Prime Minister and the government's plans to make meaningful change.
It feels at the minute that really a lot isn't working in our country. We are determined this week here in Liverpool to talk about the change that we're delivering on that will make a difference, that will bring some hope and optimism back. But absolutely fixing the foundations of our economy, stabilising our economy is absolutely crucial because everything else has to flow from that.
31 people have been arrested in a nationwide Home Office crackdown on people smuggling gangs. That 3-day operation involving the National Crime Agency, police and international partners targeted locations including Belfast, Liverpool and Luton. Over £400,000 of criminal cash and 10 fraudulent identity documents were seized during checks at ports, airports and road networks. Minister for Border Security Dame Angela Eagle says the government is cracking down on criminal gangs, exploiting vulnerable people, risking lives and, she says, profiting from despair. A second man has been arrested this afternoon over what police are describing as the shocking kidnap of an 87-year-old man in Oldham. The pensioner was dragged into a black car, attacked and then dumped miles from his home, suffering serious injuries. Greater Manchester Police say he did find help by eventually knocking on a door after that incident. 2 men aged 24 and 39 have been arrested on suspicion of kidnap, with one already released on bail. And finally, we end with some news from the Middle East. The Foreign Secretary says there needs to be an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, following what he's described as a worrying escalation. David Lammy says the ongoing hostilities are in nobody's interest, as he's advised British nationals to leave Lebanon now. It comes as Hezbollah's deputy leader has said the terror group is now in an open-ended battle of reckoning with Israel. He made those comments during a funeral for a top commander killed in an Israeli strike on Friday. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup on all the top stories at 5 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite an unsettled few days to come for many of us, with some heavy rain around. We've already seen some of that over the course of this afternoon. With low pressure moving into southern areas of the UK, that's feeding in those heavy pulses, even some thunderstorms around, and hail continuing on as we head into the first part of this evening. There is a rain warning in force to the rest of today for Wales, central southern areas of England, so do continue to take care. It is a little bit drier further towards the north, but quite cloudy across eastern coastal areas. That cloud beginning to move its way further inland, but we'll hold on to a few clear spells for parts of northwestern Scotland, and it could turn a little bit chilly here, but otherwise quite a mild night elsewhere, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius as the lows for many of us. An amber weather warning then comes into force at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, where we could see some potentially very heavy rain. So do take care as you head out first thing on Monday morning, particularly across parts of Wales into the central region, parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire as well. A few sunny spells trying to break through for parts of eastern Northern Ireland into western Scotland, but generally it will be a cloudier start to the day here compared to some recent days. And we start to see some patchy rain moving into the far north of Scotland as well. That will slowly push its way southwards during the course of the day. But the real focus for that heavy rain is those central regions. Again, the amber weather warning in force for Lincolnshire into the Midlands areas, where there could be some localised flooding and disruption over the course of the day. Still, we'll see temperatures climb to around 20 degrees Celsius across the far south if we see some sunshine breaking its way through, but generally temperatures around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in the north. This rain will gradually move its way off towards the North Sea as we head throughout the end of Monday and in towards Tuesday, but things generally are set to remain fairly unsettled as we head over the course of the next coming week with further rain and strong winds at times, and things will also be turning cooler for all of us with temperatures dropping below average for the time of year by the end. Bye-bye.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Does. Good afternoon, 37 minutes after 4 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, would a Tory deal with Reform save the Conservatives? It's the big question of not just the current Conservative leadership election, but also the next general election. So can the Tories deal with Farage? Those looking at the results from July's general election and the current opinion polls will speculate about the dramatic change if the Conservatives and Reform Party shares are added together. Now, this includes those on the right fearing the damage Labour could do over two terms in government. I don't think they're going to get 2 terms, not at this rate. So for the Great British Debate this hour, good luck with that. I'm not being rude, but I mean, all the disaster so far, I mean, maybe they can change the game, but right now. So I'm asking, would a Tory deal with Reform save the Conservatives? Well, joining me to discuss this is broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, also broadcaster and author Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie Cundy.
Let me tell you, Nigel would not want to go and do any deal with the Tories. They are toast. And what they have done, they've lied to the electorate. They absolutely, shambolically messed it up.
Well, what did they lie about?
Oh, they've lied about so many things. I don't know where to start from. You know, there's so many things, Nana, that they lied about. They weren't true. They never did Brexit properly. You know, they said they would. That was another lie. Boris was far more liberal. He's never been a proper Tory. And they became the sort of Lib Dem party. They forgot their roots. They forgot what conservatism was about. And they let those true Tory voters down in so many ways. And we had the biggest, highest tax since the Second World War.
Do you blame them for the way Brexit has turned out? Do you feel that they've failed?
Yes, they failed totally. And Nigel, quite rightly, feels totally betrayed and let down. Now, Nigel, you would know from being at the Reform conference, it's full of energy, positivity. This is like a new beginning. Yeah, OK, people can say 5 MPs. It's a long way to go. But as Nigel said, anything is possible. They can do this, and I really do believe they can. The demographic has changed, and people are disillusioned with both parties. And the beginning this Labour Party has had is atrocious.
Well, the point that you make is it is only the beginning, so they've still got at least 4 years and 11 months and counting, or is it 10 months and counting, before the next general election if they take it to the wire.
That's right, yeah. I think Nigel Farage, I think they're splitting the Conservative vote, the centre-right votes. They're going to split that, and they're going to split it in 4.5, 5 years' time. I think Farage would do a deal with the Conservatives so long as things change dramatically. You know, he feels, just like you were incandescent earlier, he's incandescent about immigration. So we haven't clamped down on worldwide immigration, clamped down on Eastern European immigration. That's being replaced by immigration from all around the world. I think if they've got 4 million votes, so they need proportional representation, I believe. But I think that they're still a fringe party. I still think that they're the new kids on the block, and there will be some dyed-in-the-wool Conservative households who will still continue to vote for Conservative, and Farage is splitting that vote. So I think he needs to come to the Conservatives, or they need to pull out, which they're not going to do.
So you actually believe that there's a split vote and people...
Very much so.
Do you not perhaps think that people watched the performance of the Tory party and decided that they could not vote for them even...
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of a split of vote, but actually, because I think it's quite generous.
Yeah, you're right.
But the point was that their policies and their behaviour, and Lizzie feels they lied. A lot of people feel they didn't say what they were going to do and do what they said they would do.
But they got a lot more than 4 million votes. Reform got 4 million votes. The Conservatives got a lot more. I don't know how many more, but they got
That's 7 million, I think.
OK, so there you go. So there's
Lib Dem's
potentially...
got less, but more seats.
Correct. So let's just say there's potentially 11 million right-wing, centre-right voters, and Nigel Farage is going to continue to split that vote in 5 years' time.
But you're working on the assumption that people who vote Reform come from the right. And actually, a lot of people who vote for Reform
from Labour,
come from the Labour Party.
Actually, I know, and you know, the biggest threat to Labour is Reform. And they are, you know, Labour, what they're doing at the minute, it's going terribly wrong. And, you know, from all this, you know, the donors, all their gifts, they've not addressed the elephant in the room. Are they going to at this conference?
All right, well, we'll come to the gifts in just a moment. But this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Right, where should we go? Let's go to Cornwall. Let's have a chat with Jonathan Jones. Jonathan Jones, we've missed you. Oh, hang on.
Hi, Nana. I haven't got much tea, but I'm out on the north coast of Cornwall with farmers. You can only grow tea on the Tregothnan River on the south coast of Cornwall, but I've got my fact book with me, and I can tell you that Lizzie's right. There's going to be tea and toast in abundance coming up because there's 272 tea companies in this country, according to Plimsoll, and unless this government wakes up to what needs to be done for supporting small businesses... And, look, the Tories didn't do a much better job. I think Nigel Farage really understands a lot of small businesses in a way that most other just don't. They don't understand what this country needs to make money and to, you know, get people moving again.
Do you think that what needs to happen is that the Reform and Tory party, in some respects, need to reunite, to join up the right to vote?
Look, I think Lizzie's right on that. I think, what you were saying is that they probably will end up talking. They're going to end up talking, but it's not just Tory voters that are moving to Reform. It's Labour as well, isn't it? So I think what is great is to have a voice of common sense. And Nigel told me once, I gave him the most British tea in history, and I said, what do you think of that? He says, pretty average, which is pretty much an insult. But from Nigel, I took it as a compliment because he tells you exactly how it is, isn't it? He's a really straight-talking guy, and that's what everyone loves about him.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Lovely to see you, Jonathan Jones.
And you too.
Jonathan Jones, he's there in Cornwall. He's our great British voice. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the Labour Party hand back donations and gifts from donors?
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
And feelings of stress and anxiety tend to be quite normal for a lot of kids. And if it's normal for the kids, then it affects the parents as well.
Well, it seemes that our canine friends could be the cure after new research by the University of Bristol found that dogs are incredibly sensitive to their owners' emotions.
OK, how do we cheat into this? How can your doggy help your family handle stress during this time of the year? Let's go to the Director of Canine Affairs at Guide Dogs UK, Tim Stafford. Tim, we're talking about this as if it's a big revelation, but obviously, you know, a man like yourself, you're well used to this, and you can see when a dog is reacting. What form would that reaction take, do you think?
Yeah, you know what? It's nice when the science kind of confirms what most of us have known for a very long time. Our dogs become members of our family and they come very, very close to us. So it's no surprise that anything that goes on in the family is going to be detected and picked up by the dog. That can be changes in behaviours. It can certainly be the dogs watching our behaviours and starting to mirror those behaviours. But what this research says is that the dogs can actually smell our emotions. It's not just that they're responding to our behaviour changes, they're responding to our physiological changes as well, because we smell differently when we start to get anxious. So at this time, there's lots of changes in a lot of families' lives. Kids are going back to school, young people are going to university, parents are having to deal with all of the emotions attached to that. So it's no surprise that our dogs start to detect that too.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Don't forget as well, you can stream the show live on YouTube. Right, so it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should the Labour Party hand back donations and gifts from donors? Now, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has defended accepting gifts and donations from Labour donors, insisting that she has been open and transparent about the process. That's not quite the point, though, is it? Angela acknowledged public frustration over political donations, but defended her actions, saying that such contributions have long been part of British politics, and stressing the importance of teamwork and pragmatic negotiation to achieve Labour's goals. That's literally got nothing to do with accepting clothes from donors, though, has it? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the Labour Party actually hand back donations and gifts of this nature from donors? So not obviously financial donations given to the party that all the others accept, but I'm talking about individual sort of personal donations that people are given, like clothing and all that kind of stuff. Well, joining me now is broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Danny Kelly.
I don't think, first of all, I don't think they can. We're talking about spectacles and suits and dresses, and I understand the principle behind your question, but I don't think that they should, because that is a way of almost absolving them of their sins, and I think out of principle they should keep them. They've made their bed, they should lie in their bed with the free spectacles, with the £2.5 Savile Row suits, if that's where it came from, with his wife's dresses. By giving them back, it's almost like, first of all, they'll never do that, because then that would be an acceptance of guilt, that they've done something wrong. But I don't think they should anyway. If it was me and I wanted to give them back, I would feel more punished if the donor said, no, I'm not taking it back, or if social consensus was, no, you don't give it back, you keep them.
How about they give them to some sort of charitable organisation?
Those spectacles and suits.
Yeah, well, so what? Well, look, and I said this to I said this to my other panellists the other day. If you came here, Danny, with 12 red roses and you brought me gifts every week, that could be seen as sort of bribes to sort of keep in favour with me. That's right. And I think this is how this comes across, Lizzie Cundy.
Yeah, well, Rayner has stated, hasn't she, that she's not going to accept any more of these free gifts. And judging by her outfit today, I can see she's doing that.
What a great line that is.
No, truthfully, though, I actually think they should give back every single item. And I'll tell you why, because they were sitting there preaching, being so moralising over Boris about wallpaper, you know, you name it, anything. They would go on and on and on, you know, that they could do no wrong, you know, being this moralising class warriors, and they themselves are accepting over £100,000 worth of gifts, and you're saying you don't want anything in return. They're going to have to give something in return. And let me tell you, his portfolio, Starmer, he's got 7.7 million, and him and his wife, Lady Starmer, have over, I think it's £200,000. Look, come on.
But the story would go away if they return the spectacles or the value of the spectacles or the value of the dress? Because you can't give someone a pair of someone else's prescription glasses, because what are they going to do with them?
Well, they could give it to charity. Look, I think
pair of glasses?
absolutely obscene.
Well, yeah. Yes.
Why?
They went to Taylor Swift.
It's not worth anything.
Whether you're a fan or not, they went to Taylor Swift, top seats, and they
How are they
actually
going to give
went
that back?
twice. They went twice. They could have given that to a charity,
to a
someone more
child.
in their constituency. Aren't MPs supposed to look after their constituencies?
I agree, but how are you going to give back?
Why did they not give that?
How are you going to give back tickets to a
Well, I
Taylor
know,
Swift concert
but
that's already happened?
They should have thought of that before they took them and went twice.
Look, let's be straight here. You can't give back things that have passed in terms of events and stuff like that.
Or spectacles.
So you can give spectacles. So the premise here is that they should be returning anything that is returnable, and I would say they should. You shouldn't be taking or accepting gifts.
I agree.
From people who are giving you, and that's across the board. Sorry, that's across the board, and not just the Labour Party. It's all of them.
It's a way of them absolving themselves of their sins. That's why you shouldn't take them back, because they are still sinners.
But how can they point the finger at everyone else and yet they're doing it themselves?
Lizzie, that's the hypocrisy that stays with them. As soon as you give them back, then the hypocrisy
drag them
is
down.
diluted.
Because they're supposed to be all for the working man.
Let them drag it down. I agree with you.
Absolutely awful, despicable what they're doing.
They should
and
keep
let me
them.
tell you about that Arsenal box. I don't want it because I support Chelsea. But that £8,000 a week. Yeah. £8,000 a week, and he thinks that's fine. But yet Rishi could go to a football match.
Southampton.
And he went and sat in the crowd
The
at
Prime
Southampton.
Minister, yeah, that's right.
Even Prince William sits in the crowd. He may have security around him.
Aston Villa.
Sits in the crowd.
Well, listen, Benny says, Nigel Farage, also you've been getting in touch, by the way, gbnews.com/your say. Benny says, Nigel Farage has something Starmer, Rayner and the proposed candidates for Tory leadership will never have, and that is...
Class.
Glasses?
Charisma.
Oh.
Charisma, of course.
Boris had it as well.
Oh, yeah, like Farage, yeah. Buckets of it.
Richard said that the Labour Party shouldn't refund the freebies. The individuals like Starmer and Rayner who received them should. So, absolutely, a case of the Labour individuals, OK. Steve says Reform UK isn't there to split the vote. They are an alternative to the other two parties. I wouldn't vote Conservative or Labour if Reform didn't exist. I'd be voting independent.
Yeah.
And another one from Richard here. Reform and Conservatives need a pact to beat rotten Labour. And Age of Reason says, Danny, you are wrong. Conservatives shot themselves in the foot. I was a confirmed Conservative local secretary. They created their own demise. Reform pick up them and Labour theirs and Labour's votes.
And let me just tell you, when you look at Keir Starmer doing his speech, you look at him at Labour, look how many times he looks at the script, looks at his notes. There was Nigel Farage, no auto cue.
Right, so also Grumpy Grandad been in touch. The winter payment issue is winding me up no end. I don't even get it, but it angers me so much. They've no idea what it's like to be stuck in one room trying to stay warm because you can't afford to turn your heating up, or even in some cases I do, and it's not close to being funny. You're honestly worried about surviving the winter. Yes, thank you for that. Keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/your say. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Stay tuned. Loads more still to come. Also, Steve Gillan will be in the studio live, giving us an insight on how prisoners could potentially be reformed. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite an unsettled few days to come for many of us, with some heavy rain around. We've already seen some of that over the course of this afternoon. With low pressure moving into southern areas of the UK, that's feeding in those heavy pulses, even some thunderstorms around, and hail continuing on as we head into the first part of this evening. There is a rain warning in force to the rest of today for Wales, central southern areas of England, so do continue to take care. It is a little bit drier further towards the north, but quite cloudy across eastern coastal areas. That cloud beginning to move its way further inland, but we'll hold on to a few clear spells for parts of northwestern Scotland, and it could turn a little bit chilly here, but otherwise quite a mild night elsewhere, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius as the lows for many of us. An amber weather warning then comes into force at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, where we could see some particularly potentially very heavy rain. So do take care as you head out first thing on Monday morning, particularly across parts of Wales into the central region, parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire as well. A few sunny spells trying to break through for parts of eastern Northern Ireland into western Scotland, but generally it will be a cloudier start to the day here compared to some recent days. And we start to see some patchy rain moving into the far north of Scotland as well that will slowly push its way southwards during the course of the day. But the real focus for that heavy rain is those central regions. Again, the amber weather warning in force for Lincolnshire into the Midlands areas where there could be some localised flooding and disruption over the course of the day. Still, we'll see temperatures climb to around 20 degrees Celsius across the far south if we see some sunshine breaking its way through, but generally temperatures around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in the north. This rain will gradually move its way off towards the North Sea as we head throughout the end of Monday and in towards Tuesday, but things generally are set to remain fairly unsettled as we head over the course of the next coming week with further rain and strong winds at times, and things will also be turning cooler for all of us with temperatures dropping below average for the time of year by the end. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible luck. The Britain I grew up was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public. Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's yours, and of course it's theirs. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Coming up, the Labour Party kicked off their conference in Liverpool as Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner delivered a keynote speech fighting back tears as she took to the stage amid their party freebies row. And for the interview, I'll be joined by ex-gangster turned CEO Steven Gillan, once one of the most UK's wanted London gang members, now determined to help others avoid going down a criminal path. We'll be talking about Labour's early prison release scheme and was it successful? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. 1 minute past 5. The top story tonight. Labour's first party conference in power in 14 years has been underway today in Liverpool, with speeches from the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary as the party continued to battle over a row over donations. Opening the afternoon session earlier, Cabinet Minister Darren Jones called for Labour to hold power for 5 terms and make it, he says, the natural party of government. Earlier, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner declared that now is Labour's moment and promised to bolster workers' rights, build high-quality homes and strengthen communities.
There will be no complacency. We've seen where that leads. Don't forget what they did. Partygate, COVID contracts, the lies, division, scapegoating and the unfunded tax cuts for the richest that crashed our economy. Don't forget any of it. The Tories failed Britain and they tried to cover it up. A crater in the heart of Britain's economy, a puncher in the pocket of every working family, and a £22 billion black hole.
Well, the conference runs until Tuesday, ending, of course, with Sir Keir Starmer's leader's speech, which we will bring to you live here on GB News. But there could be trouble for him elsewhere in the UK, as the SNP's Westminster leader Stephen Flynn has said that the new Prime Minister is failing to deliver on the change that he promised Scotland in the general election. He claims that despite the SNP being willing to work with Labour, that Sir Keir Starmer's completely out of touch with Scotland and the issues the country faces. It comes after the Prime Minister's already faced criticism over cuts to the winter fuel allowance and his acceptance of clothing donations. Earlier, our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire asked the people of Glasgow if they feel Sir Keir is delivering.
In 3 months, give or take, this Labour government, how do you think they're performing for Scotland?
1 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah.
Again, why?
I'm a pensioner. They've taken my winter fuel allowance and it's wrong.
I had high hopes for Keir Starmer and no, it's all gone.
Has there been any? I haven't really noticed much, to be honest.
I'm ashamed to say I'm a Glaswegian, really, when I see the state of the place. And if that's 13 years of SNP, we're in big, big trouble. Well, no, we might be out of the trouble now with the Labour in. I don't know. Just a matter of wait and see.
Elsewhere in politics, the Reform leader Nigel Farage has been sitting down with GB News' political editor Chris Hope at their party conference yesterday. Speaking on Chopper's Political podcast, Mr Farage said in order for Reform to make an impact at the local elections next May, the party will have to complete 10 years of evolution in just the next 6 months. However, that hasn't stopped him from setting quite the target.
We've got enough people to have 2,300 candidates. The question is, are they the right 2,300 candidates? Because we will be held to a higher standard than everybody else. I'm aiming in those elections to win hundreds of seats.
And you can, of course, listen to that full interview on Chopper's Political podcast. Just search Chopper's Political podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We'll change that script so I don't say podcast so much. In other news, 31 people have been arrested in a nationwide Home Office crackdown on people smuggling gangs. The 3-day operation involving the National Crime Agency, police and international partners targeted locations including Belfast, Liverpool and Luton. Over £400,000 of criminal cash and 10 fraudulent identity documents were seized during checks at ports, airports and road networks. The Minister for Border Security says the government's cracking down on criminal gangs exploiting vulnerable people and profiting from their despair. A second man has been arrested over what police are describing as a shocking kidnap of an 87-year-old man in Oldham. The pensioner was dragged into a black car, attacked and dumped miles from his home, suffering serious injuries. Greater Manchester Police say he found help by knocking on a door after the ordeal. 2 men aged 24 and 39 have been arrested on suspicion of kidnap. 1 has already been released on bail. In the US, it's been reported that 4 people have been killed, dozens of others wounded in a mass shooting in Alabama. The Birmingham Police Department have said the attack took place in the 5 Points South area at around 11 o'clock last night. Authorities also believe multiple shooters were involved, though no arrests have been made so far. And according to local media, responding officers found multiple victims at the scene. 3 were sadly pronounced dead and a 4th later died in hospital. The Foreign Secretary says there needs to be an imminent ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah following what he's described as a worrying escalation. David Lammy says the ongoing hostilities are in nobody's interest and has advised British nationals in Lebanon to leave now. It comes as Hezbollah's deputy leader said the terror group is now in an open-ended battle of reckoning with Israel. He made the comments during a funeral for a top Hezbollah commander killed in an Israeli strike. And finally, they've always been there for us. Well, that's for the past 3 decades at least, as today marks the 30th birthday of one of the most iconic series of all times, Friends. The show premiered for the first time in the US back in 1994, fast becoming one of the most watched programmes and lasting for 10 series. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you for another roundup in about half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good afternoon. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and author Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, so still to come, the Labour Party kick off their conference in Liverpool as Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner delivered a keynote speech fighting back tears as she took to the stand amid their party freebies row. Plus, I'll be joined by writer and former mobster Steven Gillan, who will share his thoughts of the government's new early release scheme of prisoners. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the government's early release scheme failed already? MPs have issued a warning following revelations that many prisoners released under the UK's government's scheme were not fitted with electronic tags. Apparently Serco, the company that run the tagging, had run out. Send me your thoughts, post your comments at gbnews.com/say. But it's all go at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. It is well underway, and accusations of turmoil in Number 10 and the sleaze row just won't go away. What must Starmer over the next few days do to try and ease the minds of supporters? More than 1,700 prisoners were let out early in England and Wales last week as part of the government's early release scheme. But Cloud Cymru, Westminster leader and Justice spokesperson Liz Saville-Roberts have issued a warning that many of the prisoners released were not fitted with electronic tags, despite the requirement for all those being released early to wear monitoring devices, which raises serious concerns about public safety. All right, so all of that is on the way. Joining me live now from Liverpool is our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. So, Catherine, talk me through what is the atmosphere like now? Obviously, there's a lot of negativity around the Labour Party right now, but the conference was supposed to be a positive thing to display their huge majority and the power that they have in Parliament.
Yes, good afternoon, Nana. Well, sure, they won that massive majority, didn't they? They're over the moon, but they're not quite as over the moon as perhaps you might expect, given all the rows, all the donations, the dresses, the fighting in Downing Street, all the bad headlines, basically, that we're hearing about. But first of all, before we talk about Labour specifically, let me introduce you to a couple of very important guests, because there's tons of stands at Labour conference. One of those is the guide dogs. Very important work they do, of course. So let's meet now Pete. Pete, you are the policy and campaign manager for Guide Dogs. Thanks so much for talking to us on GB News today. And also, let's get down to the star of the show. This is Stevie. Stevie, hello. There's a tail being wagged. Oh, you're very beautiful, aren't you? Stevie is 6 years old. And Pete, when does he get a rest? He looks a bit tired.
We actually make sure that he gets plenty of rest during the day, but it is a long day for him. So we're finishing on the stand at 6 o'clock tonight. We'll be back to my hotel that we're staying in. He will have his tea, a good rest. I'll take him out for a little bit of a walk later on to make sure he gets some fresh air and make sure that he has time to spend and do his business. So he's really busy at the conference, but we make sure that we take care of his welfare all the way through.
agree.
And you're here to highlight a specific thing, aren't you? This access refusals. That's a real problem for some people with guide dogs. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so we've just released the latest data from our latest survey. In that, almost 90% of guide dog owners have actually received an access refusal during their partnership. That can be from anywhere, from shops, cafes, restaurants, in healthcare settings. One of the biggest issues is taxis and private hire vehicle owners. Of course, being blind, using a guide dog, we absolutely rely on public transport, and particularly taxis and private hire vehicles. So what we're asking is councils and local authorities across the country introduce mandatory disability equality training for those drivers to make sure that they understand why we require our assistance dogs and guide dogs, and particularly understand the law. It is a criminal offence to refuse a guide dog unless you have exemption from your local council. We want to make sure that those taxi drivers understand the law, know the reasons that we require these dogs, and make sure that those access refusals stop.
Really important to draw people's attention to that. Thank you so much for talking to us today on GB News. Thank you, Stevie. I think we'll go for a little wander now, shall we? So we're heading down. I'm walking forwards. That's not too tricky. My cameraman is walking backwards. We've got somebody behind him making sure that he doesn't trip up. But as you can see, it's busy now. It's the first full day. We've had the Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, making a speech earlier, talking about planning reform, talking about getting Britain building, talking about change, that one-word change that really helped to win Labour the last election, didn't it? That and the fact that people were very, very fed up with the Tories. But although Labour wants to be talking about all the things that it's going to be doing, its plan, its 5 missions for growth, for getting the NHS waiting list down, making safer streets, etc., we are still bogged down in these ongoing stories about donations, money taken by the Prime Minister, by Angela Rayner, by Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, by the Prime Minister's wife, for dresses, for spectacles, free tickets for events. The list goes on, and we've basically had this drip of stories pretty much every day over the last week or so, and it is quite damaging, and people here are quite frustrated by it because it is pulling focus from what should be a very, very upbeat conference. The other thing, of course, that's worrying them is that the message from the Prime Minister so far has been a bit doom and gloomy, hasn't it? We know that the sort of economic state of the country is not good. We know that public services are in a really bad state. We know that there's tough choices coming, but it's not a very positive message, is it? And I think what we expect to see here and hear here is that, yes, there's some pain to come, but it's going to be worth it. And what's it all for? When are things going to get better? We need some sort of hope message at the end of this. So that's what I expect the Prime Minister will be bringing on Tuesday. We will hear from the Chancellor tomorrow.
Right, well, up next, I'm joined by a writer and former mobster, Steven Gillan, who will share his thoughts on the government's early release scheme for prisoners. But before we do that, I want to quickly turn over to my panel to just get your brief thoughts on the Labour Party conference so far.
Well, I think it's very... they need to address the elephant in the room. They need to talk about all the wardrobe gate, donor gate, why really Sue Gray is getting more money than the Prime Minister, all these issues that are obviously disturbing the members. They need to address it. Yeah. Can't hide. Where is Starmer? He's not doing any interviews.
It will do some soon, I should imagine.
They're amongst friends in Liverpool, obviously, Scousers, big Labour supporters, generally speaking, so they're on safe terra firma, if you like. But I think what they should do is ask people from other cities how they feel about certain policies that they've enacted. And I'm sorry, I'm like a stuck record, I'm talking about the pensioners.
All right, well, listen, stay with us, keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/your say. Right, so former mobster Steven Gillan will share his thoughts on the government's early release scheme of prisoners. Do not go anywhere.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
More than half of people aged 50 and over feel happier from having a friendship, and 46% feel a sense of belonging too. Tomorrow is the start of Friendship Month. The Oddfellows, a non-profit friendly society that provides older adults with opportunities to create new friendships, is now inviting more people this September to join their local groups and expand their friendship circles through giving a taster activity at local community centres. We're joined now by Jane Nelson, who's the CEO of Oddfellows. Good morning, Jane. Thanks for joining us. As someone in my mid-30s, I've even noticed as well that my own friendship group has diminished over the years as kind of, you know, people get married and have kids and they kind of drift apart and don't make time for each other.
How important is it to have friends separate to your family? What benefit does that bring you?
As you do get older, you do lose friends for a variety of reasons. Either you lose touch or they have an illness or they pass away as you get older. The stats show that people love spending time with their friends. It always takes somebody, doesn't it? Somebody's got to make that first step to send a text to say, do you fancy meeting up for coffee, or do you fancy going to the pub, or whatever the arrangement's going to be. But sometimes somebody always has to make that first step and text or phone. And I think the other key thing is it usually tends to be the same person, but that doesn't matter as long as that connectivity is made, because that's what you need. You need the connectivity. If you think about when we were children, we'd go around the playground and say, will you be my friend? Well, we don't tend to do that as we get older. But be brave, look on Oddfellows website, see all the amazing events we've got on, go to see what's going on in your area, oddfellows.co.uk, or you can telephone 0800 028 1810, and our team will be more than happy to point them in the right direction of their local events, and there's so much going on, 300 going on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? No, it's fine, you're here now. We've not got long on the show left, but it's good. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. This is GB News, and it's now time for this week's interview. Now, last week, over 1,700 prisoners in England and Wales were released early under the government's early release scheme. But Cloud Cymru's Westminster leader and Justice spokesperson Liz Saville-Roberts has raised serious concerns, warning that many of these individuals were not fitted with electronic tags, despite it being a requirement for the early release. Now, this failure to properly monitor offenders raises significant public safety risks. The Ministry of Justice has attributed the delays in tagging to Serco. Now, this is a company and a security firm which is responsible for fitting the devices, which has held the contract since 2024. Now, they hold lots of massive government contracts, and actually these contracts are worth millions to them. But I'm joined now in the studio by writer and former mobster Steven Gillan. Steven, thank you very much for coming in.
Hi, Nana. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Right. So I wanted to just get stuck into this thing, because a lot of people hear about this and they're thinking, well, it's not the serious criminals that were released, but it was people who had a short sentence, who would have been released maybe a month earlier, but are now coming out just a month later, but are coming out a month earlier. What is your thought on this particular way of doing things? I mean, I'm not sure. You've been in prison. You know what it's like to come out of there.
Unfortunately, I have. I mean, Nana, look, this is a big, big issue, I have to say, for the public, all right? You know, for tax, for safety of the public, public funds, all of this stuff. You know, and it really gets me how this issue is put away like a dirty secret, and it's never dealt with appropriately. You know, and for me to see the handling of this, it just really is a real example of this government's incompetence you know, to manage this sufficiently, really, you know. I mean, one instance is they're saying, you know, it's the categorisation of this is on the offender and not the offence. Wrong and wrong.
What does that mean?
Well, it needs to be a very, very bespoke approach. And one of the main things that they've not put down here to ensure it's managed properly is the bridge. You know, what's the bridge? Well, a lot of these prisoners are coming out, they don't have anywhere to go, Nana. Right, you know, what they're going to do, they're going to revert to type. You know, they can't get a job, there's no resource, so they're kind of slung out without any opportunity. You know, it's really being set up to fail. So it's not helping the prisoners, it's certainly not helping the public, and it's all a little too late what they're doing.
Well, some people might say, oh, my heart bleeds. There's no bridge to help these people. They've been in prison, they need to get, you know, now they've been in prison, I don't feel any sympathy for them. And actually, some people are quite annoyed that they're even coming out early.
Look, 100%, and I get that, you know, and people have to pay their debt to society. I'm not talking about that. There are even certain people who should be in prison, Nana. What I'm talking about is these... Definitely not you, Nana.
What have I done?
No. But it's really about... Look, if these things are going to be done, which they are being done, and they've been done before, then they need to be managed properly for public safety, you know, and there's no rehabilitation. Rehabilitation, as crazy as the word may sound, you know, and this is after the fact that people have paid their debt to society, is actually in society's favour. You know, because people can go back to work, there can be less of a danger. You know, whatever talents or skill set they may have can be a contribution to society. You know, this is the only way that this issue is going to be managed in a way that's going to work, but it never seems to be.
But Sir Keir Starmer should know better, I would have thought, seeing as he was the head of the Department of Prosecutions. He's done that job. He knows about the prison system. He knows how it works. He knows the problems that arise when prisoners come out of jail. What are the sort of problems that arise when people come straight out? I mean, you've already pointed out they may not have anywhere to live, but just say they do have somewhere to live, what are the main issues that they might face?
Well, you see, it's kind of like the cart before the horse. This, you know, it's that kind of issue, and rehabilitation, you know, really facilitating a good roadmap for prisoners to integrate back into society needs to happen before they're released, right? You know, and then when they're released, there needs to be a real, you know, a real kind of management of to get them back into work, you know, and stuff like that, you know. And this doesn't happen, and that's a real problem.
Would you say it's quite irresponsible then of the government to release some of them, even though some of them may have been about to be released a month later? But would you say it's quite irresponsible of the government?
I would think it is, right, you know, because what it does, it's just, you know, it's adding petrol to a fire, really, you know, and then I say to myself, OK, it's obviously, you know, if we go down to the bare bones of this, it's a funding issue, you know, and I see other crazy things this government is doing. Right, you know, like taking the couple of pennies that, you know, our pensioners and all the rest of it have. I mean, I can go on and on about it, you know, but what that reflects to me is a really mismanagement of funds, right, after the effect, right, which is causing all these problems. So these knee-jerk reactions to, oh, we must do that, you know, the government is leveraged, but why would the government who is governing this country be in a place where they're managing this country like this?
Yeah, I want to ask you about the tagging system as well. So they're the people who provide the tags. I mean, you served your full sentence, right? Did you have to have a tag when you came out? And did you know people who have? And how detrimental is it if people who should have a tag aren't given one?
I think if it's going to, you know, if it's going to work and it's going to aid a prisoner's integration in society, family unit and all this stuff, there are areas where this is a good thing. You know, it could be a good tool, but you know, it's not really managed as well in the right way as well. You know, you're seeing other people are being, you know, let out who are not prepared for release, and of course they're going on, they're committing more crimes and all this stuff. This is not conducive to anything good going forward.
But should they be tagged then? Do you think that's a good plan? But obviously they didn't have enough tags, so they shouldn't have released them. That's, you know.
Well, I think what I'm saying is look, Nana, what they're saying is they're saying, you know, they're looking at the offence and not the offender. That's wrong because they need to be looking at both in conjunction and really selecting the right people for this. What I'm not seeing, you know, is a thorough, focused process, you know, and a vetting, you know, which is going to suit everyone and going to work. It's just like everyone in, and that to me sounds crazy.
But let's come back to the tagging thing there. The fact that people weren't given a tag when they came out and they were meant to have a tag, does that make a lot of difference in your view?
I think it does. You know, a tag is obviously a boundary and an incentive to do what you're told, you know, and in my opinion, you know, when people, some of them institutionalised and all the rest of it, they're not readily prepared for release. They need these boundaries, as anyone would, to sail the river towards a healthy way of being. So this is, you know, another thing that should have been applied. It should have been set up. It should have been managed. It has to be said.
So tell us a bit about your story then. So you went to prison for how many years did you serve? And
I got a long sentence. I got 17 years, Nana. It was very serious business with me. Many, many moons ago, I served 12 years of that as a Category A prisoner. So I've really seen this system from the bottom to the top and what it is and what it's not.
And that was for armed robbery?
That was for armed robbery.
Yeah. And so when you came out, what kind of help did you get inside the prison? And then what was there for you when you were released?
Well, I can only speak for myself, Nana. You know, high security prisoners like me, it was just about containment. There was no rehabilitation at all. You know, I'm talking about the general prison population. There wasn't really any as such that was targeted in the right way. For us, there was absolutely none. You know, it was about containment and all of that stuff. That's fair enough. I paid my debt to society and all that stuff. But of course, you know, people have to be released. They have to come out the other end, and there are expectations that people can be reformed and go on to do better things. You know, and contribute and give back to society after they've paid their debt.
So did you have any rehabilitation inside prison?
I didn't. I was actually absolutely nothing. It was, yeah, which is very damaging. I mean, I was actually released to Category A, which is really rare. So you know, you had the circumstances of me being walked to the prison gate on the day of my release with prison dogs, you know, and a full escort. I mean, that's.
And that's it, and then they just left you outside.
And then, of course, you go out, and then that's it. You get on with it. That's it.
And did they provide any sort of further rehabilitation whilst you were out?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
You know, and that's a tough river to sail because you've got a couple of years. You know, for a long-term prison, I can only speak for myself. You're institutionalised. So, of course, I've gone on to do good things, thankfully, through a lot of real hard work. But I think of other people who have to go this same course, you know.
And how long did it take you then? You said a couple of years before you actually felt that you could fit into society. What was the oddest thing or the hardest thing?
I think it's all odd. You know, if you think about 12 years, 5 years is that solitary 23 hours a day. I mean, imagine what that does to a person mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically even. You know, this is a long time, and you have to overcome a lot of that stuff, you know, because you need to find yourself again, and then of course you need to integrate into society and your family even appropriately.
Wow. So what advice then would you give to the government regarding the way they're doing things, so releasing people early, and what advice would you give them? Because obviously you've trodden the path, you know what it's like from your own perspective. So what advice would you give them from what you've seen? I've done a bit in the Times with this, Nana, you know, and for those, you know, say they are the prisoners, throw them up, lock them up, throw away the key. Yeah, I get that. But we have to have, you know, a big picture. You know, line them up and we'll throw cabbages, whatever, right, you know. But, you know, you have to have a higher mind here, all right, you know, and be a big picture guy, as the government is meant to be, of course, governing us. And it's about bespoke solutions, because there's a lot of savings there for the public purse if this stuff is done. And I don't understand why they don't attack this in a meaningful, pragmatic way, you know, that's gonna translate into something better. Well, maybe it's the same stuff. Because if it's bespoke and individualised, it takes a lot of energy, but maybe in the long run it's worth it. Steven Gillan, you've got your book out. Tell us briefly about your book. Yeah, my book, Extraordinary, you know, The Search for a Life Worth Living. The reason why with this book today is because it's all in there, you know, but the jewels, there's a lot of the jewels, how I really changed my life, you know, and stuff like that. I mean, then I went on to be, 2019, to be
nominated for International Peace Prize. People can change. People can pay their debt to society and go on to contribute greatly to society.
All right, Steven Gillan, thank you very much. Thanks for your view and your thoughts. That, of course, is Steven Gillan. He's an entrepreneur, an ex-offender, but an entrepreneur. He's done his time. He paid for his crime. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio still to come. We'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, has the government's early release scheme of prisoners failed? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and author Lizzie Cundy. But first, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. The top stories from the newsroom just after 5:30. Labour needs to break the cycle of chaos, according to the party's outgoing General Secretary. Speaking at the Labour conference in Liverpool, David Evans said the party must never lose touch with voters following its general election victory. It comes as questions mount for Sir Keir Starmer following an Observer poll which has found he's now less popular than Rishi Sunak, with his personal rating dropping by 45 points since July. Earlier, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson's defended the Prime Minister, though, and the government's plans to make what she's called meaningful change.
It feels at the minute that really a lot isn't working in our country. We are determined this week here in Liverpool to talk about the change that we're delivering on that will make a difference, that will bring some hope and optimism back. But absolutely fixing the foundations of our economy, stabilising our economy is absolutely crucial because everything else has to flow from that.
31 people have been arrested in a nationwide Home Office crackdown on people smuggling gangs. The three-day operation involving the National Crime Agency, police and international partners targeted locations including Belfast, Liverpool and Luton. Over £400,000 of cash and 10 fraudulent identity documents were seized during checks at ports and airports. Minister for Border Security Dame Angela Eagle says the government is cracking down on criminal gangs, exploiting vulnerable people and profiting from their despair. A second man has been arrested after what police have described as a shocking kidnapping of an 87-year-old man in Oldham. The pensioner was dragged into a black car, attacked and then dumped miles from his home, leading to serious injuries. Greater Manchester Police say he found help by knocking on the door of a home after the ordeal. Two men aged 24 and 39 have been arrested on suspicion of kidnap, with one already released on bail. And finally, some international news. The Foreign Secretary says there needs to be an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, following what he's described as a worrying escalation in the Middle East. David Lammy says the ongoing hostilities are in nobody's interest, as he advised British nationals in Lebanon to leave. It comes as Hezbollah's deputy leader said the terror group is now in an open-ended battle of reckoning with Israel. And the Israeli military chief in the last few moments has said that its operations against the terror group are a message to anyone in the Middle East looking to harm Israeli citizens. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup just after 6 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite an unsettled few days to come for many of us, with some heavy rain around. We've already seen some of that over the course of this afternoon. With low pressure moving into southern areas of the UK, that's feeding in those heavy pulses, even some thunderstorms around, and hail continuing on as we head into the first part of this evening. There is a rain warning in force to the rest of today for Wales, central southern areas of England, so do continue to take care. It is a little bit drier further towards the north, but quite cloudy across eastern coastal areas. That cloud beginning to move its way further inland, but we'll hold on to a few clear spells for parts of northwestern Scotland, and it could turn a little bit chilly here, but otherwise quite a mild night elsewhere. 15 or 16 degrees Celsius as the lows for many of us. An amber weather warning then comes into force at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, where we could see some particularly potentially very heavy rain. So do take care as you head out first thing on Monday morning, particularly across parts of Wales into the central region, parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire as well. A few sunny spells trying to break through for parts of eastern Northern Ireland into western Scotland, but generally it will be a cloudier start to the day here compared to some recent days. And we start to see some patchy rain moving into the far north of Scotland as well that will slowly push its way southwards during the course of the day. But the real focus for that heavy rain is those central regions. Again, the amber weather warning in force for Lincolnshire into the Midlands areas where there could be some localised flooding and disruption over the course of the day. Still, we'll see temperatures climb to around 20 degrees Celsius across the far south if we see some sunshine breaking its way through, but generally temperatures around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in the north. This rain will gradually move its way off towards the North Sea as we head throughout the end of Monday and in towards Tuesday, but things generally are set to remain fairly unsettled as we head over the course of the next coming week with further rain and strong winds at times, and things will also be turning cooler for all of us with temperatures dropping below average for the time of year by the end. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Monday, the king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 37 minutes after 5 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, has the government's early release scheme of prisoners failed? Last week, over 1,700 prisoners in England and Wales were released early. That is, of course, under the government's scheme. But Cloud Comrades, Westminster leader and Justice spokesperson Liz Saville-Roberts has raised serious concerns, warning that many of these individuals were not fitted with an electronic tag, despite it being a requirement for early release. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the government's early release scheme of prisoners failed? Well, joining me now is my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie Cundy, I'm going to come to you.
It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful that they're doing this early release. And I've said before, my friend who was a victim of domestic abuse cannot sleep. She's worried her ex-partner is going to be let out early. It is absolutely disgraceful that this has happened, and there are many more like her. And I work for a charity called Women's Aid, and there are many that are absolutely terrified that their ex-partners are going to come back because they know where they live and they'll reoffend. And how this Labour government can actually sleep at night, it beggars belief. And let me just tell you some facts. We've got now 10,000 foreign nationals in our prisons that could be sent back, and they won't. And it's costing us, the taxpayer, 50 grand per prisoner a year to keep them here.
Only yesterday we were talking about this. The irony of this story. Only yesterday we were talking about a boundary between Coventry and Warwick. Two lads banged up in the same cell for the same crime. They both got off with the 40% release. The lad in Coventry's got a tag, the lad in Warwick hasn't got a tag because of these difficulties. So there are almost geographical difficulties with Serco. And the kid, now the lad without the tag isn't a threat to anyone. He's not a violent man. He wasn't in for violence or unfortunate domestic abuse like you just spoke about, Lizzie. But what he said was, he goes, it's not a free pass because the curfew rules still apply. And if he's not in his house, they could get a random door knock at, say, 9 o'clock. But then I thought to myself, how likely is that?
Exactly, yeah.
The great thing about these tags is that they can track you.
Exactly.
And so if you, for example, if you're a drug dealer from Birmingham and you've got your modus operandi is going up to Liverpool to buy cocaine and bring it back on the M6, they can see that journey in real time.
It's a lot of detail there, don't you?
Yes, but that's the beauty of the technology. Now, if you haven't got a tag, so long as you're back, if your curfew's 8 o'clock at night, so long as you're back from the northwest with your keys of coke, you get a knock on the door, there you are.
Well,
You've passed all of the rules.
But the condition of the early release scheme was that they would get a tag, and they haven't got a tag. And this is what my issue is with it.
That Labour government are so inept that they've let these, criminals out early and without tags because they didn't, they weren't prepared. And yet they seem to be releasing the wrong sort of criminals and putting in the wrong sort. I mean, we're hearing of people just because of things they've written which are a bit, we'll say fruity, on Facebook, are being put inside. It's all wrong.
Yeah, that's the most perplexing thing about the whole situation. You've got people writing horrible stuff on Facebook and now they're doing 18-month stretches. And that's why these two kids from not too far away from me were maybe released to free up a prison cell for some idiot who's written something stupid.
And for me, it was just horrific to see them celebrating, coming out in Lamborghinis, popping open bottles of champagne. I mean, seriously, Keir Starmer, you're a joke.
Yeah.
And no wonder you're down in the polls. What is it? His position now is the lowest. It's lower than Rishi, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
He's lost at 45 points.
But at least he's got 1,400 lifelong Labour supporters from now on, if that's how many prisoners were released early. Because I remember one footage, some guy goes, I'm always going to vote Labour now. I've always voted Labour. I'm always going to continue voting Labour.
Well, they're the only ones that are appealing to the Labour Party. I mean, seriously, this is disgusting. And like I say, victims of these criminals are actually scared stiff. And look what's going on our streets at the minute.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage is right. Britain is broken.
And also, just briefly, this far-right smear, anyone with an opinion on immigration is far-right. Anyone taking part in all of the civil disobedience and disturbance is far-right. Some of the most racist people I have ever been surrounded by are left-wing Labour supporters. If you ever went to Goodison Park in the 1980s and 1990s, Liverpool is a home of socialism. 90% of people vote Labour. If you were black, or if you're a footballer, you had thousands of Labour left-wing supporters screaming racist abuse at you. You were just likely to vote Labour and throw a brick at a copper as you were to vote Reform and throw a brick at a copper. This far-right stuff is nonsense.
I do think it's nonsense.
It's a fallacy.
It's a fallacy.
It's a convenient fallacy.
It is a convenient fallacy because I'm often called far-right, but I'm black, so I don't think you can be. If you're, but that's not the point here. That it is a ridiculous thing to say that someone is far-right just because their opinion is different from yours and they hold the opposite view. But that's what we get here. I do accept a lot of people on the left do seem somewhat egregious and quite unpleasant when it comes in terms of racism. I receive more racism from black people than I do white people, and that's always seems to have been the case. But listen, give us your thoughts, post your comments, GBNews.com/your say. Andy says, why was Lord Ali in Downing Street for a month? What was he doing in the seat of government, the house the taxpayer owns? Grumpy Grandad says, whilst you're arguing about clothes and stuff, we're ignoring the far bigger issues like immigration and a load of other things. I'll tell you what, Grumpy Grandad, there's just literally so much on the list. We will come to that. Right, coming up, Supplement Sunday, where my panel will take a look at some of the stories that caught their eye this week. Stay tuned, that's next.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public. Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Steven Gillan, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
When I knew that I was doing this segment this week, I feel like this week was a real homework task for me because I'll be honest, I haven't been around Scottish food much in my life, but I obviously know all the obvious. And I thought I'd bring in a selection of some of, I guess, the quintessential culinary delights of the North. I mean, we have in front of us haggis.
I think we should begin with some haggis.
So, Michael, I've never eaten haggis before. This is going to be the first time.
Well, have you eaten anything like haggis before? Have you eaten anything that is made from the intestines of an animal?
I mean, I've had things like chopped liver and, a bit of offal here and there.
Well, there we are. I mean, I got a great surprise. I was holding when I was in government, I was holding a great party in Scotland, and I had a lot of Spanish visitors, and I was offering them haggis, and I thought that they would be astonished by haggis and maybe repelled. But when they ate it, they said, oh, no, this is morcilla. So, you know, there is an equivalent in Spain.
Absolutely.
So if I recall, and you've probably been mugging it up, which I have not, but haggis is made within the stomach of a sheep.
Yes.
And you take the heart and the lungs and some other part of the sheep and you mash it up.
With onions, oatmeal, suet.
Yes.
And it's stuffed into the sheep's stomach. But a lot of the haggis you get these days, especially sort of the slightly cheaper varieties in supermarkets, it's usually an artificial casing.
Oh.
You know what? This is actually quite nice.
I think it's absolutely heavenly. And
It's very savoury.
To me, it's two things. Yes, to me, it's two things. It's both the taste and the texture. You quite rightly referred to the oatmeal going in there. So it's got this crunchy, granular sort of texture. Marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
47 minutes after 5 o'clock. Good evening. It's time for Supplement Sunday now. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on GB News. And it's the part of the show where my panel take a look at some of the stories that caught their eye. Joining me, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Let's go with Danny, your supplement.
OK, rickshaws in the West End of London. OK, you don't really get them in other parts of the country, but you get them in London, and you get a quote off a guy saying, I want to go from here to Buckingham Palace. How much, mate? He'll say, and this is an actual incident, he'll say 13 quid. Ooh. So at the end of the 500-yard, if you're only close to 500-yard trip, he says, OK, put your pin in. He's charged you £1,300, and this is common. If he says £24.50, next thing you know, you're being charged £245. If you ask for a receipt, he'll say, we don't do receipts. The next thing you know, he's scarpered off. Transport for London have been inundated with complaints. They pick on easy targets, maybe people who would be identifiably not with the British language, maybe, you know, tourists from the Far East or whatever, or Yanks who just are so casual, and that's the perception of it. You say, OK, 15 quid, next thing is, it's £1,500.
Wow.
And then they're like, they leave you in a load of dust.
This is in London?
Of course.
Well, they're not going to get very far, are they?
Wow.
Traffic is so slow.
Sounds like my ex-husband.
Say that. He might be watching. I don't think he likes me much.
No comment. Well, did you see the big fight last night?
I did, yeah.
Anthony Joshua knocked out.
Yeah, round 5, I think.
Thrown in.
Towel thrown in, yeah.
Daniel Dubois, what did you think?
Oh, well, I thought Daniel Dubois was a better fighter. I really like Anthony Joshua. I think he's a decent human being. I've seen documentaries about him.
Wasn't up for it, though, was he?
He was just out-fought. He didn't recover from the first round put-down.
Well, last night, I actually introduced Liam Gallagher on a station, and Liam actually came in. We're all excited because Oasis tickets are going like, you know, no one could get a ticket. It's easier to get a dentist appointment than an Oasis ticket. And he walked on, strutting in with gum, did a couple of numbers, and you know what? Everyone's now wanting their money back for the tickets. They're even saying they might put them on eBay.
Where was that? Singing?
He sung before the boxing.
Oh, no.
At Wembley.
Did you say you introduced him? I thought you said you
I was on doing the radio.
I didn't see you as one of the ring girls.
No, I wasn't in the ring. They were the old days with the ring cards. But literally, Liam had to perform before the boxing, and it was shocking. And fans are actually saying they want their money back and maybe even selling them on eBay.
Wow.
So it's not maybe so good that he did that. And he strutted off. He didn't even put his hand up and thank the audience. He just walked off the stage. Have some manners.
He's a rock star. That's what they do.
With attitude.
Well, he's collected his money now. People have paid for them, so unfortunately...
Yeah, that's right.
But to be honest, with the Anthony Joshua fight, you know, he gets 10 million, doesn't he, for just... even if he loses, so...
Yeah.
What's the incentive to win? I would go like...
Every boxer wants to win.
With the first punch, I'd just go,
To be honest, I think you would have half a chance against Daniel Dubois. How fierce you are.
I wouldn't want to fight against him.
I wouldn't want a right hook off
Yeah,
her.
but knowing I love boxing, and I used to do the ring cards a long time ago when I was a very young girl. My poor mum happened to see me on telly. It was with the Eubank fight. That's how long ago it was. And I have to say, Anthony Joshua, I don't think should have done this fight. He wasn't up for it. And I think he's gone for the money, and it's not fair on the fans.
What do you mean? Well, it's not fair on the fans. He's the one that's got to step into the ring with this dude.
Yeah.
Listen, if it was me, someone said, look, you've got to fight this person for 10 million. Like I said, with the first punch, I'd be like, ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he was up for it, though. He wasn't fit enough.
He wanted the money.
He wanted
I
the
think
money.
when you're so wealthy, I don't think money is the primary motivator. I think winning the fight is. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know, there comes a point, isn't there, where you think, oh, maybe he could have done with a spare 10 million, I don't know. But anyway, well, look, this is my one. This is my supplement now. This is one about the Labour Party, because you know how much I love them. Labour revives the boiler tax with heat pump targets. So, manufacturers say hefty fines for missing net zero quotas will force up prices by up to £180 per unit. So heat pumps, the target for manufacturers to sell will be imposed on the industry. Ed Miliband, obviously the Energy Secretary, is expected to introduce the policy from next year in April, despite warnings that it will drive up the cost of a new boiler. And the idea is that boiler makers need to hit a set target, otherwise they'll face a hefty fine.
Not every house will work with heat pumps.
No.
It's maddening. It's crazy. They're massive lumps as well. You've got to keep them in the back garden. You've got to excavate and put them underneath concrete.
They don't work.
And what it will see, there'll be a run of people now buying boilers and just storing them, because at some point you won't be able to buy a boiler.
Exactly.
There'll be Arthur Daly-type characters with lockups full of boilers.
No wonder, can I tell you, no wonder everyone is leaving this country. 4,500 in the last 5 months are leaving this country.
Well,
Sick
that's
of
not
this.
everyone, is it?
No, but a lot of people, and there's another 9,500 on their way.
Your Pimlico plumber is on his way
Charlie
somewhere.
Pimlico's already gone.
I like that lad.
Yeah, but the fact is, this is just madness. It's madness and it's not fair on the consumer, and they don't work.
Well, I mean, I think British Gas did a heat pump, and then they said, well, if it doesn't work as well as your boiler, you can have your boiler back and we'll exchange it. That was at the beginning of the launch of the heat pumps. But lots of people getting in touch. Craig is talking about Liam Gallagher, and he said he's nothing more than a jumped-up pop star, rock starry. I won't say the last word. And then Victor says that the UK now must be a laughingstock of the rest of the civilised world. Take just one look at the Deputy Prime Minister, whose main claim to fame is not actually having any qualifications. A Foreign Secretary who knows nothing about geopolitics, and a Prime Minister who is too busy grubbily taking backhanders to do the job he has been appointed to. This does not bode well at all on the for the Great Britain on the world stage. Well, a lot of people are sharing those sentiments, but of course they are the party in power. They were voted in by a majority with our electoral system, and they are to govern for the next 5 years. Their conference is this week, and GBNews will be following it very, very closely. I've got to say a huge thank you to my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. And also commentator and broadcaster who's changed again, Lizzie Cundy.
Thank you.
For
Great fun.
joining me today. And as ever, a huge thank you to you at home for your company. Up next, Neil Oliver is on the way. I'll leave you with the weather forecast. Ooh, almost small. Wonderful, wonderful week. See you soon.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite an unsettled few days to come for many of us, with some heavy rain around. We've already seen some of that over the course of this afternoon. With low pressure moving into southern areas of the UK, that's feeding in those heavy pulses, even some thunderstorms around, and hail continuing on as we head into the first part of this evening. There is a rain warning in force to the rest of today for Wales, central southern areas of England, so do continue to take care. It is a little bit drier further towards the north, but quite cloudy across eastern coastal areas. That cloud beginning to move its way further inland, but we'll hold on to a few clear spells for parts of northwestern Scotland, and it could turn a little bit chilly here, but otherwise quite a mild night elsewhere. 15 or 16 degrees Celsius as the lows for many of us. An amber weather warning then comes into force at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. We could see some potentially very heavy rain. So do take care as you head out first thing on Monday morning, particularly across parts of Wales into the central region, parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire as well. A few sunny spells trying to break through for parts of eastern Northern Ireland into western Scotland, but generally it will be a cloudier start to the day here compared to some recent days. And we start to see some patchy rain moving into the far north of Scotland as well that will slowly push its way southwards during the course of the day. But the real focus for that heavy rain is those central regions. Again, the amber weather warning in force for Lincolnshire into the Midlands areas where there could be some localised flooding and disruption over the course of the day. Still, we'll see temperatures climb to around 20 degrees Celsius across the far south if we see some sunshine breaking its way through, but generally temperatures around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius in the north. This rain will gradually move its way off towards the North Sea as we head throughout the end of Monday and in towards Tuesday, but things generally are set to remain fairly unsettled as we head over the course of the next coming week with further rain and strong winds at times, and things will also be turning cooler for all of us with temperatures dropping below average for the time of year by the end. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You can be.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the